Deputy Speaker. Let us pray. Almighty God, where you have called us to govern this province, we ask your help to make decisions and laws that are just and will promote the interest of our people. Almagtige God, ons bid dat u gedurende ons vergaderings ons die nodige wysheid sal gee en ons motiewe suiwer sal hou en dat u ons sal help om ons tekortkominge oor te kom en al ons besluite aan u op te dra. Sikalele ilezwe letu na bantu balo umisili ukulungu kipondo letu unkosi sikelele i Afrika kina abantwana bayo kukele inkokole inkokele yayu yeniki ikolo i Afrika. All this we beg in your holy name. You may be seated. Order members, I would like to remind all honorable members that our standing rules have accordingly been amended to accommodate hybrid sittings as we are having today, with members having the same privileges within this particular chamber and online. I would also want to take this opportunity to welcome guests that is in the gallery. Thank you so much for your attendance here today, and also to each and every person that is watching on the YouTube channel. Members, we will proceed with the business of the House, and I now recognize the Chief Whip.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I give notice and move that notwithstanding the provisions of Rule 21, that precedence be given to the subject for discussion in my name. I so move.
Thank you, Chief Whip. We will now deal with the subject for discussion in the name of the Honourable Bosman, but let me first check if there's any objections to the motion being moved. There's no objections. Agreed to. I now recognize the Honourable Chief Whip.
Thank you once again, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, across the Western Cape, families are living through a nightmare. In just 1 month, August, more than 30 murders were reported in our province. These include mass murders, mass shootings that took place in Delft, Guguletu, Muizenberg, and Eersterivier. These numbers are not statistics. They are parents, sons, daughters, neighbors, and breadwinners. And behind each shooting lies the same question: where's the state when people need protection? Two institutions carry direct responsibility: the South African Police Service and the Parole Board. The South African Police Service is meant to prevent and investigate crime, to protect the vulnerable and secure convictions. Yet, the Western Cape sees SAPS that is barely operational. There are only 12,908 active officers across the province, with an average vacancy rate of 12.39%. In precincts like Deep River, staffing shortages reach over 40%. How can officers investigate cases, dismantle gangs, and secure convictions when entire stations are crippled by vacancies and under-resourcing? The Parole Board is entrusted with ensuring those released from prison do not endanger society. Yet, since 2023, thousands of parolees have been released into our communities. Over 3,000 in a single year, with hundreds through blanket remissions granted by our state president. On the Cape Flats alone, nearly 2,400 parolees re-entered between February 2024 and February 2025. Too many of them are returning to their old networks of violence and gangsterism, fueling the very shootings that we now condemn. This is not rehabilitation, Honourable Deputy Speaker. It is recycling crime back into our communities. The truth is very stark. The South African Police Service and the Parole Board are failing in their mandates. The one cannot prevent crime without sufficient officers and sufficient resources and the investigative capacity to do that job. The other cannot claim to protect society when it releases high-risk offenders into communities already so under siege. That is why the approach must change. The South African Police Service must urgently fix the staffing shortages. They must restore the investigative capacity within the police service. They must allocate the necessary resources to the hotspots where crime is at its worst. The Parole Board, on the other hand, must strengthen the risk assessments that they do. They must improve the monitoring of parolees, and they must place community safety at the center of every decision. The people of the Western Cape are not asking for miracles. They are demanding that institutions tasked with their safety do their jobs. Until the South African Police Service and the Parole Board drastically change course, communities will remain trapped in a cycle of violence, fear, and grief. Therefore, I table this subject for discussion.
Thank you, Honourable Chief Whip. I recognize the Honorable Nkwensu.
Deputy Speaker, today's speech is titled, "Don't Shift Blame. You, DA, you are complicit on the surge of violent crime in the Western Cape." Let me start off by commending the police for their courageous work in discovering about 19 firearms and over 1,500 rounds of live ammunition in Mitchell's Plain. The operation itself suggests that if the police were to be properly resourced and intelligence capacity stabilized, success rate would be high and criminals would be in prison. But Speaker, let us not fool ourselves. The sheer number of weapons uncovered is enough evidence that gangs and criminal networks in Cape Town are emboldened under the watch of the DA-led provincial government and the city of Cape Town. You are complicit. Deputy Speaker, even the framing of today's debate exposes that complicity. What kind of government that calls a debate not to confront its own failures, but to lament crime as if it were a natural disaster? What kind of leadership that blames the police and correctional service instead of taking responsibility? A weak government, a liberal government, a DA government. Speaker, in August 2024, the DA-led provincial government, City of Cape Town, signed a cooperation agreement with the South African Police Service. Yet, hypocritical, instead of reporting back to this parliament on the progress of that agreement, you choose to launch a public bashing of the police. You are exposed. What we are really dealing with here is not shootings. Those are but a consequence. Shootings in Cape Town is a consequence of two crises: the chronic underdevelopment that suffocates our communities on the one hand, and the deliberate destabilization of police intelligence on the other hand. To reduce this debate to shootings alone, as the DA has done, is to expose the low intellectual capacity of those who framed it. It shows a government incapable of connecting causes to consequences, and therefore incapable of solving the crisis. People of the Western Cape, you are on your own. Deputy Speaker, also it is evident that the DA is allergic to responsibility. They refuse to admit their role in the chronic crisis of underdevelopment in Cape Town. In Cape Town, youth are unemployed, locked up of opportunities, denied sporting and recreational facilities. When you deny young people hope, you drive them straight into the hands of the of the gangs. That is the DA legacy. The DA government refused to admit that they have no plans to address another feature of chronic underdevelopment, the squatter camps which are found across. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, DA's alleged to responsibility is plain to see in the current crisis plaguing the mini bus taxi industry. The fight between Carter and Cordetta, instead of intervening and resolving, you run to courts, you run to the lawyers. Let's talk about the DA so-called safety plan, a R1 billion white elephant. They brag about cameras and eyes in the sky, but the truth is damning. Out of 3,297 cameras, 1,530 are not monitored. Over 1,700 monitored cameras, there is no evidence that they aided a successful investigation only in the elite suburbs of Cape Town. Deputy Speaker, while the DA is quick to point fingers at national government, they remain silent about their own mess. Where are the 31 firearms that disappeared after the amalgamation of the city and other local municipalities? These guns are out there in the hands of criminals because of the DA. That's not my claim, Speaker, Deputy Speaker. It is recorded in the October 2022 audit firearms compliance. Yet the bourgeois media looks away. That's pure complicity. The ANC, as the leader of society, knows what responsibility means. For that, we accept that destabilization of the intelligence in the country and the province in part is in part responsible for the proliferation of firearms and distribution of drugs in the province. It is against this background that we call on the National Commission to strengthen provincial intelligence and urgently appoint a permanent provincial head of intelligence. Without the police intelligence, police is blind. Without accountability, the DA safety plan is a scam. Further, Speaker, we note the report of the Follow regarding inmates, and we are saying everything wrong must be fixed. Our thesis as the ANC is simple and undeniable. The destabilization of police intelligence on the one hand, and the DA's failure to confront the chronic crisis of underdevelopment on the other are directly responsible for the surge in violent crime in this province. The safety plan must stop being a liberal slogan and become a real program to complement the South African Police Service. The Speaker, it is evident that the DA is not the solution to crime. Instead, it is part of the problem. The majority of people, the working class, the crime taking place is not happening where the elite that side live. It happens in Mitchell's Plain, in Hanover Park, in Khayelitsha, where you do not deploy resources. Where we stand, address the crisis of chronic underdevelopment, build houses, ensure that there are no potholes where the workers and the
Honorable
poor live.
Nkwensho, can you please take your seat? There's a point of order. I see the Chief Whip.
Honourable Speaker, it's not a point of order. I'd like to know if the member is prepared to take a question.
Honorable Nkwensho, you have 1 minute and 29 seconds. Are you willing to take a question?
I will take it when you're outside. And again, look at this.
Please take your seat, Honorable Nkwensho.
Deputy Speaker.
Honorable Nkwensho, please take your seat. Honorable Chief Whip, the member is not prepared to take a question. I now recognize the Honorable Syed.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, on a point of order, the Chief Whip stood up before he was recognized. That is out of order. You cannot stand up here. We have rules in this house. You don't stand up when you are not being recognized. You first put up your hand, then when you are recognized, you stand up. Thank you.
Honorable members, I recognize the Honorable Premier. I'll come back.
Very much, Deputy Speaker. On a point of order, what was being raised by the Leader of the Opposition does not apply to our Parliament. He's obviously a Johnny-come-lately here. That's how you recognize, or you ask Chair to recognize you. You stand up.
Honorable members, is it a different point of order? Honorable members, I recognize the Honorable Syed.
Yes, Chair. Amidst the Premier's sense of ageism and wanting to undermine people because they are young, I understand that. Hence, he doesn't care about young people who are being killed as a result of crime. But let me say, I'm calling a point of order on the Premier. I'm calling a point of order on the Premier. You ruled, Deputy Speaker, you ruled.
I didn't rule
on
yet.
the matter. Then the Premier comes up and comes with his own.
I didn't rule on the matter yet. Honorable members, I wouldn't want to not take. Honorable members, order. Honorable members, I am close to naming members. Honorable members, I'm close to naming members. Honorable members, the debate is of significance not only to members in this House, but also to the public. I'm going to recognize the Honorable Minister Wenger, and then I will then rule afterwards. I see that the Minister.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Given the gravity of the debate and in general, if memory serves, there is a rule that prevents members from raising frivolous points of order.
Honorable members, in June last year, I was duly elected to be the Deputy Speaker. I have full confidence, not only in my own ability, but also the support that I have gotten from this particular House. I will trust that members of this House will keep the decorum of the House. Like I've indicated, this is a serious debate because we are talking about people's lives. So we will proceed with the Honorable Nkwensho. And I want to say, before you take the podium again, I was very close to actually asking the Honorable Nkwensho to take his seat. But I didn't want to interrupt him because it was becoming extremely rowdy within the chamber. And I would want those that are participating online to also be able to hear every word. So please, members, there's a mom, there's a grandmother, there's a father potentially listening to us now, and those persons are wanting to hear what elected members of Parliament have to say. The Honorable Nkwensho, you may proceed.
Thank you very much. It's not a surprise that those who were disrupting and heckling is the historic privilege, and they continue to be privileged even today. And the same individual have no experience, actually practical, they do not relate with what we're dealing with. Because the bodies the police calling to carry out weekend in, weekend out are actually picked out in working class townships, not where the historic privilege reside till today. And thus to them, this debate is nothing but a joke. Also, they seek to hide their propaganda of the so-called safety plan, that there is nothing in it because our people continue to die, yet we are told. And also that this side of the house also is betraying or betray the cooperative agreement. And that in itself exposes the hypocrisy the DA had. And I must say that how this debate was framed also exposes the low-level intellectual capacity, and that these ones can't connect the cause and the consequences. Thank you very much, Speaker.
We will proceed to the online platform. I recognize the Honorable Stevens.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. The Patriotic Alliance stands in agreement with this House that the surge of shootings in our province is out of control. Our communities are literally bleeding. Families are burying their loved ones every week, and our social media timelines filled with rest in peace. And the truth is, Speaker, South Africans and the residents of the Western Cape, in Cape Town in particular, are tired of empty promises and lack of accountability. But while it is easy to point fingers only at steps and the parole board, we cannot ignore the reality right here at home. The DA governs this province. The DA governs the city of Cape Town, and it is here under their watch where we are losing lives daily on our very own doorstep. We hear constant boasting from Alderman J.P. Smith about the upgrading of law enforcement resources, new vehicles, more officers, advanced technology. But I ask today, where are those resources when Hanover Park, Kraaifontein, Delft, Kalkfontein, Nyanga, Mitchells Plain, Elsie's River, Santa Kraal, Bishop Lavis, and many other areas are crying out for help? Who are these resources really for? For all the citizens of Cape Town, or just for a privileged few? On the 23rd of August, when the Springboks played against the Wallabies at Cape Town Stadium, law enforcement visibility was everywhere, on every corner, every street, every entrance. The city showed us what it can do when it chooses to. And so I ask, why can this same energy, the same commitment not be deployed to the Cape Flats, where people fear leaving their homes? Are we not good enough? Are our people not worth the same protection? Honorable Speaker, the Patriotic Alliance says this: sifting the bucket is not the answer. SAPS and the parole board must take responsibility for their failures. Yes, but the Western Cape government and the city of Cape Town cannot escape accountability. You govern here, you hold the power here, and therefore you too must answer for the lives being lost here. The time for politicking is over. The blood of our people cannot be used as a weapon in party battles. We need urgent, coordinated, and committed action from national, provincial, and local government to protect our communities. Because until then, Honorable Speaker, the only truth we live with is this: in Cape Town, stadium can be saved, but our streets remain war zones. And Honorable Speaker, I, Donita Stevens, are part of these war zones every day, and I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Stevens. I recognize the Honorable Kaiser Philander.
Agbare adjunct speaker, vandag staan ek voor u nie net met statistiek nie, maar die harde realiteit dat tussen 2022 en 2024 daar 557 kinders vermoor is in die Wes-Kaap. 557. Dis 557 wie se toekoms van hulle ontneem is, drome wie weg is, en in die laaste 5 maande 63 kinders vermoor, baie in areas waar bende oorloë woed. Hierdie moorde is nie willekeurig nie, dis simptome van 'n samelewing in diep krisis. Gemeenskappe wie gijslaars gehou word deur kriminele netwerke waar ons kinders nie meer veilig is om te speel, te leer of te droom nie. Adjunkspreker, die impak van hierdie geweld strek oor generasies. Kinders word groot in 'n bloedbad, waar hulle nie net vriende, broers en susters verloor nie, maar wie hul kinderjare verloor, hulle vertroue in volwassenes verloor en hoop in die toekoms verloor. Wanneer 'n 10-jarige 'n teiken word, 'n 14-jarige bloot toevallig 'n slagoffer in 'n bende oorlogsgebied is dit nie net 'n persoonlike tragedie nie, dis 'n nasionale krisis. Gemeenskappe knak onder die gewig van vrees. Skole word slagvelde en huise word tronke. Geweld breek nie net individue nie, maar die siel van gemeenskappe. Geweld vloei uit die krake van 'n gebroke stelsel. Ons moet duidelik wees, geen enkele instelling kan hierdie probleem op hulle eie oplos nie. Hierdie krisis vereis gedeelde verantwoordelikheid van die regering, burgerlike samelewing, gemeenskappe, skole, godsdienstleiers, elkeen van ons. Ons het hervorming nodig in hoe ons polisieer, hoe ons rehabiliteer, hoe ons onderrig en hoe ons die mees kwesbares beskerm. Veiligheid, agbare adjunkspreker, is 'n reg, maar daardie reg word daagliks geminag deur die instellings wie se taak dit is om ons te beskerm. Die SAPD misluk, ondersoeke sloer, skuldigbevindings vat jare en gemeenskappe verloor vertroue. Die paroolraad laat herhaalde oortreders vry in woonbuurte wat hulle eens op 'n tyd geterroriseer en getraumatiseer het sonder enige ondersteuning, toesig of verantwoordbaarheid. Adjunkspreker, wanneer die strafregstelsel swak is bende sterker. Wanneer instellings misluk, word bendeleiers rolmodelle. Ons moet die SAPD en die paroolraad verantwoordelik hou vir hul grondwetlike pligte, of ons gaan elke dag by die grafte van ons kinders staan. Ons jong manne raak verlore aan bendes, dwelms en geweld, nie omdat hulle gewelddadig gebore is nie, maar omdat ons 'n wêreld geskep het waar geweld hul enigste pad na mag, identiteit of oorlewing is, en ons moet hulle terugwen. Die dodetal is nie net data nie, dis 'n daaglikse tragedie en dit vra vir aksie. Adjunkspreker, laat ek duidelik wees vandag, as daar vandag in hierdie huis 'n party sit wat nog steeds glo dat die polisie mag nie aan die provinsie behoort oorgedra te word nie, dan dra hulle saam bloed op hulle hande, want hul weiering hou lewensgevaarlike gevolge vir ons kinders in. Adjunkspreker, elke kind wat ons verloor is 'n toekoms wat ons nooit weer sal terugkry nie. Ek dank die adjunkspreker.
Thank you, Honorable Kaiser Philander. On the hybrid system, I recognize the Honorable Kasim.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, it was exactly in 2019, after the current Premier had assumed office, we announced that his provincial government, led by the DA, will introduce what he termed the safety plan. Again, Deputy Speaker, the purpose of the safety plan, we were told, was to create safer communities free from fear. It was also supposed to halve crime in the province between medium to long term. Deputy Speaker, what then transpired following these assertions was a total disaster, as millions of South African rands were wasted on a project and endeavour that was not well researched. And since then, the murder rate in this province started to increase in proportions we have never experienced before. In August last year, whilst the DA was excited to be included in the so-called GNU, the same Premier again created false hope and empty promises, introduced and signed the so-called Western Cape Cooperation Agreement for Safety and Policing with the National Minister of Police at the time and the State President, which took place in Belhar. So, Deputy Speaker, in framing the question for this debate, the honourable member of the DA should also have featured the failures from this provincial government, headed by the Premier and executive members from the DA. Then to only direct blame to SAPS and the parole board. Deputy Speaker, crime in the Western Cape is remarkably high. it should be declared a provincial disaster by the national government with adequate assistance provided. This is a matter that cannot be solved by SAPS on its own, which itself is in a disaster of its own with institutional weakness and divisions. Deputy Speaker, we no longer even receive quarterly crime statistics on time from SAPS. Everything is just a disaster with children being introduced into gangsterism at an early age and experiencing a growing number of child murders in the province. We are even at the point where young teenagers between the ages of 15 to 17 are not only active participants of gangsterism, but the rate in which they are being murdered on a daily basis is also increasing, more especially in townships. Deputy Speaker, these are the same townships where we were told by those running this province that there is a plan to identify them as crime hotspots and direct law enforcement personnel in those areas with the aim of eradicating crime. Just yesterday, Deputy Speaker, a man was shot and killed in Samantha Street, Montrose Park, bringing the total number of people being shot and killed to 6 in just the space of 3 days in the Mitchells Plain area alone. This past Sunday as well, we also witnessed events of another mass shooting in Kells River where 5 people were shot and killed at one go, with the motive for the attack also believed to be gang-related. Another thing that makes things worse in the police investigation, which lead to nowhere whilst people continue to die in numbers. Deputy Speaker, where a case is investigated without any leads for a prolonged amount of time and ending up being referred to the cold case unit of SAPS as a result of failures to make any breakthrough in investigation. But in conclusion, Deputy Speaker, blaming one another is not going to reduce crime in this province. We must find a way to work together in tackling this crime, and those running government should also ask for input from those that are not in government concerning solutions to this ongoing matter. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Kasim. We remain on the hybrid system. I recognize the Honorable Murray.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the Freedom Front Plus calls for an end to the violence on the Cape Flats. Now, the Western Cape Strategic Plan of 2025 to 2030 states that, and I quote, safety is a shared responsibility, unquote. This in which it states that collaboration is important between government, communities, and businesses. But the DA reneged on its responsibility when it rejected the motion in this House last week, which called for joint decisive measures between the Minister of Community Safety and Education to ensure the safety of our matriculants and scholars. This was a slap in the face of communities and innocent children who are living in fear on a daily basis. Now, the DA must answer whether they place a higher value on saving on a budget than saving innocent lives, whereas the purpose of the budget is to save lives and to serve the people. The ANC must take equal responsibility for the failing of our South African police and failing the public. The South African police have declined into a state of dysfunction in many ways due to political interference and widespread internal corruption. We cannot blame SAPS in isolation of the ANC, who held power over the department for over 30 years. Now, the Minister of Correctional Services, Dr. Pieter Groenewald of the Freedom Front Plus, has called for a review of the parole board and the system because of the 36% parolees who are reoffending, and he has denied early parole to many since taking office. In conclusion, Speaker, shootings and violence is symptoms of a deep-rooted socio-economic problem, but the Western Cape government has a duty to fulfill, to play their role in safeguarding our children and innocent lives of the Cape Flats. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Murray. I now recognize the Minister, Minister Murray.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, over and over again, we hear opposition parties in this House pointing fingers at this provincial government for the policing challenges we face in this province. It is about time that those who seek to place blame without taking into consideration what the mandates are at the different levels of government be honest with themselves for a change, and more importantly, with the people we serve. Deputy Speaker, policing under current legislation remains a national competence. It is the South African Police Service that carries the primary responsibility for policing and crime prevention. The province does not control the police service, national government does. Yet many opposition voices in this House seek to ignore this fundamental fact. They distort the truth and create confusion by suggesting that the province alone is responsible for policing outcomes. This is not only disingenuous, but also dangerous. It misleads the public and detracts from the real work that needs to be done. Die harde werklikheid is, die Suid-Afrikaanse Polisiediens het te min hulpbronne. Sonder die nodige personeel, toerusting en ondersteuning bly selfs die beste polisieeringsstrategieë net goeie bedoelings op papier. Dit is 'n wrede ironie. Jy kan 'n perfekte intervensiestrategie beplan, maar as jy nie die kapasiteit het om dit uit te voer nie, is mislukking onvermydelik. Dit is in hierdie konteks dat ek my opregte waardering uitspreek vir die polisiebeamptes op die grond in hierdie provinsie. Hierdie dapper mans en vroue staar daaglikse gevare en uitdagings in die gesig met 'n vlak van toewyding wat ons respek en bewondering verdien. Hulle werk onder geweldige druk, dikwels oorweldig deur die blote omvang van misdaad en die beperkte hulpbronne tot hulle beskikking. Ten spyte van hierdie uitdagings volhard hulle. However, we cannot expect police officers to perform miracles when they are stretched thin. It is at times like these that national government must step up, and frankly, they have not done enough. We must be clear. The national government's failure to adequately resource SAPS hampers their ability to fight violent and organized crime effectively. As a province, we have no choice but to call this out and demand better. And so I turn to a matter that is crucial for the future of policing in our province, the devolution of policing powers. Until provinces have the authority, resources, and powers to make decisions on policing, we will remain limited in what we can achieve. To truly improve policing, we must have control over how policing is planned, resourced, and executed. Current legislation and the way policing is managed puts us as province in a difficult position. We are held accountable by our communities for policing outcomes, yet we lack the authority to implement changes effectively. This connect undermines our ability to serve the people properly. We therefore commit to continue advocacy for the devolution of policing powers. Maar terwyl ons vir hierdie hervorming druk, staan ons nie ledig nie. Ek wil met hierdie huis die konkrete stappe deel wat hierdie provinsiale regering neem om veiliger gemeenskappe te skep en te verseker. Ons versterk gemeenskapsgebaseerde veiligheidsstrukture soos buurtwagte, ons gemeenskap in blou en gemeenskapspoliseringsforums. Dit is die oë en ore van ons gemeenskappe. Hulle bevorder vertroue, samewerking en waaksaamheid. Deur opleiding, akkreditasie en die voorsiening van toerusting bou ons hul kapasiteit om misdaad te voorkom en veiligheid te bevorder. Ons benadering erken dat veiligheid nie van bo af afgedwing kan word nie. Gemeenskappe moet aktiewe deelnemers aan hulle eie sekuriteit wees. Wanneer bure na mekaar omsien en wanneer wetstoepassingsagentskappe inwoners aan hand werk, word die grondslag vir veiliger woonbuurte gelê. Effective law enforcement remains a cornerstone of our strategy. When it became clear that despite numerous calls for increased police resources, national government was not providing them, we therefore had to innovate. We could simply not sit back and accept that we do not have enough boots on the ground in the face of rising levels of violent crime and murders. We therefore established LEAP to deploy additional boots on the ground in areas most affected by violent crime. We have therefore technically stepped into the space where national government ought to deliver. Deputy Speaker, let me also address a damaging misconception propagated by some opposition parties in this House who wrongly accuse this government of directing these resources towards affluent areas. They choose to mislead our people to score cheap political points. It is fact that LEAP officers are deployed in areas most affected by violent crime and murders such as Kailicha, Mitchells Plain, Philippi East, Nyanga, Delft, and Guguletu. LEAP has become an indispensable part of the fight against crime. For example, they form an integral part of Operation Chanela 2 and play a major role in the lockdown operations that are targeting these gangs in Cape Town. The work they do is making a real difference on the ground. Voortbouend op hierdie suksesse beplan ons om LEAP ontplooiings na landelike munisipaliteite uit te brei, ons munisipale K9 eenhede te verbeter en meer vredesbeamptes reg oor die provinsie op te lei en te ontplooi. Dit sal sigbare polisering verhoog en wetstoepassing nader aan die mense bring. Ek wil ook graag ons samewerking met Mitchellsplein beklemtoon. In samewerking met die gemeenskap, die SAPD, die stad Kaapstad, se wetstoepassing, LEAP, korrektiewe dienste, nie-regeringsorganisasies en verskeie regeringsdepartemente het ons die Mitchellsplein veiligheids- en ontwikkelingsplan ontwikkel. Hierdie plan is 'n voorbeeld van wat ons doen om koördinering tussen verskillende regeringsdepartemente te versterk, terwyl ons ook na ons mense luister. Hierdie plan bring alle belanghebbendes na die tafel, identifiseer die oorsaak van misdaad, veral bendegeweld, en ontwerp getekende intervensies om dit direk aan te pak. Ons is verbind tot hierdie inklusiewe, gekoördineerde benadering, omdat ons weet dat geen enkele entiteit hierdie probleem alleen kan oplos nie. Deputy Speaker, we acknowledge that our youth are often the most vulnerable to the lure of gang life and substance abuse. That is why we initiate programs like Chrysalis Academy, which equips youth with the life skills, mentorship, and pathways to employment. Additionally, our peace officer and traffic warden training program upskills young people, providing them with accredited certificates and valuable workplace experience. This is not only improves their employability, but also builds a pipeline of committed individuals who can contribute to community safety. Furthermore, our department supports the establishment of community safety forums, which brings together SAPS, correctional services, traffic services, social development, and other departments to collectively plan and respond to crime challenges within municipal areas. This integrated approach enhances coordination and accountability across the justice cluster. Deputy Speaker, let me be clear. This provincial government is doing everything within its powers and more often beyond to improve policing outcomes and empower communities to create safer environments. But the limitations imposed mean we cannot do it alone. We need honest conversations, not political grandstanding. We need national government to take its responsibility seriously, to provide adequate resources and to develop power so that provinces can make meaningful changes. We will continue to innovate, collaborate, and invest in community safety initiatives. We will continue to stand with our police officers and our communities, and we will continue to advocate for the evolution of policing powers. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Order members, I now recognize the Honorable Khalil Brunkhuis.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Honorable Deputy Speaker, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to everybody. The Western Cape legislator continues blaming of national government for its failure to protect citizens, specifically on the Cape Flats and surrounding areas, is nothing but empty rhetoric. The DA-run Western Cape legislator does not have the political will to effectively deal with the increasing gang-related violence and shootings. 2 weeks ago, the People Against Gangsterism and Drugs, PAGAT, had a mass march in Bonteheuwel, and a heavy police contingency was deployed to the area. Furthermore, we are witnessing that at the frequent demonstrations and pickets by pro-Palestine supporters, there are heavy SAPS presence. The question is, why does the province give the impression that it does not have the capacity to be more visible in high-risk areas? Why is the office of the Western Cape Police Ombudsman, which was established to support the department's mandate for police oversight, not doing its work? The absence or lack of the police ombudsman oversight on how, when, and how many police patrols are visible on the Cape Flats and surrounding areas is questionable. Why the silence from the police ombudsman when heavy police presence are deployed at PAGAT marches and anti-Zionist rallies, but they are not visible in high-risk areas on a daily basis? Al-Jamaa recognizes that South Africa's parole system is dysfunctional. Many criminals do not deserve to be released on parole and should rather rot in jail. But we have a situation on the ground which negatively impacts severely on communities. It is clear that the Western Cape legislator is selective in the deployment of SAPS and not sincere to effectively eradicate gangsterism and other forms of criminal activities in high-risk areas. I thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Brunkhuis. I recognize the Honorable Christians.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Honorable Christians, I see the leader of the official opposition.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, just a question. I notice the absence. I don't see Honorable MEC Mayor. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen him for this critical debate. I see he's not on the order
Honorable
paper that they
Said.
only attend when he's speaking.
Please,
Thank you.
please take your seat. Honorable members, that is not a point of order. I would want to remind members again. I will want to remind members again that frivolous points of order will not be entertained. Like I've indicated in the beginning, this is an important discussion. I recognize the Honorable Christians.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the Cape Flats is under siege and held in a grip of fear. Communities are in a state of alarm at the daily violence. And Deputy Speaker, when you look at the burger today, it reads as follows. Kaapstad se bendes, 130 mense afgemaai net in 1 maand. And if you look at News 24, it says at least 63 children murdered in the Western Cape in 5 months. Now, Deputy Speaker, most of these killings are gun-related. And the question should be asked, where does the arms and ammunition come from? Can you believe it? 19 firearms found in a house in Mitchells Plain. And shockingly, 15,000 rounds of ammunition. 15,000. And that's the question, where does it come from? Shockingly, you also read in the paper that a robbery occurred at the highly secure Onscore dockyard in Simonstown. And they say it's alleged that the security guard was involved. Now, this is shocking because people are killed on a daily basis and yet firearms are stolen. Sometimes from police stations. And that is a major area of concern. But Deputy Speaker, let me say, we as the ACDP agree with the devolution of police powers. At the moment, the province got oversight, but not operational. If you don't understand, it's operational powers that the province is seeking. Operational powers. In closing, Deputy Speaker, I still believe if we resource our neighborhood watches more, crime will be reduced. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Christians. Honorable members, order. Honorable members, order. I'm trying to ascertain if the commotion is linked to it being spring or if people are just not hearing me clearly. We would want to proceed with the business of the day. And I encourage members to listen attentively so that they come an opportunity for them to respond accordingly. I now recognize the Honorable Van Minnen.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Many areas of Cape Town, Manenberg, Hanover Park, Delft, Mitchells Plain, Nyanga, are bleeding. Over 2,000 people have been shot with firearms province-wide since January, averaging nearly 13 victims a day. Children cannot walk safely to school. Mothers and grandmothers patrol the streets in reflective jackets because they no longer believe that SAPS can protect them. And frankly, it can't. Just yesterday, a naked man managed to grab a gun from an armed SAPS officer outside the High Court, turn off the safety and fire off several shots right outside our door downstairs. And the takeaway image, if you watch the video, an armed and uniformed SAPS officer running away from the guy along the pavement. Need I really say more about SAPS preparedness? SAPS is under-resourced, under-trained, and underwhelming, indulging in infighting from political factionalism to the point of insensibility. Detectives are overburdened, forensic backlogs delay justice, and gang task forces are reactive rather than proactive. We have one facility in the country to destroy guns seized from the streets, and convictions for illegal gun crimes remains at 5%, with half of all cases never reaching court. This is because of bad investigations, insufficient evidence, incomplete dockets, forensic delays, and resource shortages, all of which fall within the exclusive competency of SAPS. Despite brave officers on the ground, specialized gang units remain chronically underfunded, understaffed, and the vehicles are broken. Firearms flow freely through porous borders, are stolen from arms corps and corrupt supply chains, yet firearm recovery operations are sporadic. And may I remind the House that 1.2 million rounds of ammunition were stolen in 2001 in the riots in KZN. Think how much space 1.2 million rounds equates to. Police confirmed that since early June, there have been over 30 murders and mass shootings incidents across the Cape Flats. But on Monday, the Provincial Police Commissioner described the weekend as not having many shootings in Mitchell's Plain, whereas at least 12 people were shot dead. And that says everything about the uncaring and non-responsive SAPS management. And it's no surprise that community structures across the Cape Flats are calling for his removal. And I wish to also remind the House that in terms of Section 205 of the National Constitution, the mandate of SAPS is to, and I'm quoting, prevent, combat, and investigate crime, to maintain public order, and to uphold and enforce the law. And it is time to state that SAPS has comprehensively failed in this mandate. Equally troubling is the role of our parole boards. Recent data reveals that in areas like Delft and Elsie's River, over 36% of parolees reoffend, often committing more violent crimes. Some serve less than half their sentences before release, only to return to the same gang networks that dominate their streets. Between February 24 and February 25, 395 parolees were released across the Cape Flats. 254 reoffend within a year, which is a 10.6% rate. Our parole system prioritizes empty cells over safe communities. It fails to deliver real rehabilitation, with overcrowded prisons offering little more than gang recruitment grounds. The Western Cape government has repeatedly called for policing powers to be devolved, so that law enforcement can operate closer to our communities and can respond more efficiently and effectively. It is further leveraging every other service department to mitigate the impact of crime. But the national government of the ANC has resisted leaving local communities caught between criminals and an uncaring political bureaucratic class. Opposition parties repeatedly object to devolution or any initiative by the provincial government and the City of Cape Town to reduce crime in the Western Cape. And why, Mr. Deputy Speaker? That is the question. In the face of SAP's failure, why does the opposition constantly object to measures to reduce crime and to build safety? They do nothing to build SAP's capacity, do not call out the vacancy rate of SAP's personnel, nor the problem of extremely low conviction rates within the criminal justice system. Why do we hear nothing about any of this from the opposition, who remain implacable in their denial and refusal to support the people of the Western Cape to live in a safe environment? Instead, they simply bang on with their usual narrative about blaming everyone but themselves. What is their true agenda? So here's a way forward. Devolve policing powers to the province. Give the Western Cape the power to build specialized provincial anti-gang and firearms units with modern technology and intelligence capacity. Devolve detective and investigative work, including support in forensics, ballistics, and weapons destruction. Reform parole with mandatory risk assessments for violent offenders. No early release for gang-affiliated inmates without demonstrable rehabilitation. Build community-centered safety by expanding violence prevention programs. City ward councillors get a ward allocation of R1 million a year to spend on their wards. This includes installing cameras and support community-centered safety initiatives. But ANC councillors do not spend the money on those options, instead choosing projects based on political patronage, as is these wards that have the highest crime rates.
Terrible. Terrible.
Fix the prisons by breaking gang dominance inside with modern security systems and roll out skills training and education. Currently, when prisoners return to Polesmoor, they're not even searched. And we all know that there are many, many incidents of how criminals manage to get things into prison when they aren't being searched. The rise in shootings is not just a crime statistic. It's an indictment of a SAP system and an ANC obsession with central control that is failing the people of the Western Cape. The Western Cape deserves policing that protects.
Kindly conclude, Honourable Member.
Thank you. Prisons that rehabilitate and parole systems that serve justice, not gangsters. The time for excuses is over. The time for real change is now.
Thank you, Honourable Van Minnen. I recognize the Honourable Heron.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the Western Cape government has the mandate and the capacity to change the living conditions that are the root causes of violent crime. This government must use its powers, mandates, and resources more effectively instead of dabbling in policing and then complaining about how poor policing is. There are good people in every organization, but the recent developments regarding SAPS have shown the level of dysfunction at the heart of policing in South Africa. But our violent crime problem is not as a result of poor policing alone, nor is it as a result of under-resourced policing alone. This is because policing alone cannot prevent crime. The Premier introduced the Western Cape Safety Plan in 2019 as a comprehensive plan to reduce and prevent crime. The crime reduction component was to increase policing resources, the boots on the ground, while the crime prevention component was the favorite buzz phrase, a whole of society approach, with every minister having specific interventions aimed at addressing the root causes of crime. 2 weeks ago, when I asked the Premier what crime prevention interventions had been implemented, he was unable to answer. He cited examples of what is in the safety plan, but he couldn't say what had actually been done. Had I asked him about the crime reduction program, the boots on the ground, he would have easily rattled off how many LEAP officers had been deployed. This is because the safety plan has prioritized policing over prevention. This means that this government has deprioritized investing in the environmental and socio-economic conditions that are conducive to violent crime. Sadly, the emphasis on the boots on the ground has failed to show the results we were promised. Contact and violent crime, including the plan's own measurement of effectiveness, being the murder rate, has increased since the plan was implemented. The Premier repeatedly asks us to read independent studies on the effectiveness of the safety plan, but the same organizations have more recently published studies that address crime prevention, and they conclude what we keep saying, that there's a strong association. Thank you. There's a strong association between violence and poverty. In areas where incomes are low and unemployment high, levels of violence are also high. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Heron. We remain on the hybrid system. I recognize the Honourable Windvogel.
Honourable Speaker, I welcome the ANC Chairperson, Comrade J.J. Talisizwe, to the House. He has taken the time to attend, showing that the life of the people of the Western Cape matters. The ANC welcomed this debate, but must state that we have repeatedly called for it, especially after the recent mass murders, only to be ignored. It is only now, because it suits the DA's agenda, that it's been held. This legislature must serve all the people of the Western Cape, not just one party. We must place it on record that parliamentary processes cannot continue to be abused to give one party endless opportunities to sponsor subjects for debate, while other voices are sidelined. Speaker, we are dealing with a crisis of unprecedented proportions. Between April and August 2025 alone, 63 children were murdered in this province. Let us pause there. 63 young lives gone in just 5 months. Children as young as 11 to 14 years old shot dead in robberies. Children aged 15 to 17 caught in the crossfire of gang violence, families destroyed, dreams buried. That is not the fault of a parole board. That is the live reality of communities failed by a provincial government that hides behind excuses instead of delivering safety. The DA has perfected the art of shifting goalposts for decades. They have blamed everything and everyone for the flood on our streets, from SAPS, the parole board, the national government, even the constitution itself. But what they refuse to confront are their own failures. The truth is that the DA has built and sustained a province of inequality, exclusion, and neglect. It must be made clear to everyone that violence crime is not born in isolation. It grows in conditions of despair, including in informal settlements without lighting, proper sanitation, or safe mobility. It thrives on hopelessness and crippling unemployment, particularly among young African and colored people, with over 360,000 youth between age of 15 and 24 years, not in education or employment or training. This is a systemic failure of the provincial government. These root causes cannot be outsourced to the SAPS or parole board. They are a failure of governance. Speaker, we remember the case of Sinopolo Mafevuka, brutally murdered while walking to a toilet in Khayelitsha. That was not about parole. That was about spatial apartheid sustained under DA governance, where poor people remain trapped in danger zones with no dignity. And instead of tackling the root cause like the poverty, the unemployment, the inequality, they hide behind press conferences, expensive PR stunts, and blames. Their heartlessness is plain for all to see. They do not care about the poor. They never have, and they never will. The DA wants to parade itself as the party of safety, yet so-called Western Cape safety plan is nothing but an expensive failure. Billions of rands have been poured into Premier's Windy Spec project, money that should have transformed communities, yet murders continue to rise. In fact, the province promised to cut murders by 50% by 2029. Instead, we are already on track to bury more children and more families. Premier Windy should not be applauded for the plan. He should be held accountable, if not jailed, for wasting taxpayers' money on this nonsense scheme of his. The DA pretend to be tough on gangs, but let us be clear that this is apartheid 2.0. They sustain that system of division that the National Party once created. Just as the National Party once founded and protected gangs in the Cape Flats to divide and destroy communities, the DA today sustain the same system. It is no coincidence that senior DA leaders, including J.P. Smith, Malusibo, and others have been linked with gangs. A government in bed with criminals has no moral authority to fight crime. Let's look in the facts from their own records. In just 6 months between January and June, there were 2,250 murders in this province. 1,384 West Africans, 884 were colored. That means over 90% of the victims were from Black and colored communities. This is not coincidence, it is systematic. It is a political neglect. The DA brags about expensive technology, toys, and dashboards, but then what is the reality? Teachers in Philippines need police escort because of gang extortion schools. Children walk to class under the shadow of guns. Parents are too terrified to send their kids to school. This is not a safe province. It is a war zone for the poor, while the wealthy hide behind their gates. Public healthcare bears the brutal cost of this violence. The majority of victims end up in our hospitals, where threatening gunshot wounds is incredibly expensive. But instead of helping to heal the situation, the Premier and his administration are wasting public resources to challenge the National Health Insurance in the Constitutional Court. They are actually blocking universal health coverage for all. The ANC caucus strongly condemns this shameful action by the DA provincial government that has turned its back on the people. The ANC welcomes the responsiveness of the acting Minister of Police, who will visit the province next week for assessment. Honorable Speaker, the DA arrogance is matched only by their stupidity. They laugh while our children die, too blind by their own ignorance to see the crisis. They are dunderheads, focus on politicking instead of solutions. The ANC, however, stand with the people. We will never stop fighting for the safety and dignity of our communities. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Van Vogel. I now recognize the Premier.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and thank you to all the members who've taken part in this debate. I listened very carefully, and quite frankly, if we need to couch this, I mean, we're talking about parole here, but everybody spoke about the big elephant in the room, and that is murders in our country. We have 27,000 murders in our country every single year. 27,000. There's 22,500 in the other provinces. There are 4,500 in this province. That is totally unacceptable. And the system of policing, the system of the criminal justice process into our courts, the conviction rates, the paroles, all of those statistics are horrendous. It is terrible, and we have to do something else. We got to do something different. We can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. I hear some of the speakers saying we've got to work together, and then we're not going to work together. But we have to find a way. You know, when you walk on the streets, this last Friday, I joined the minister and a whole lot of neighborhood watch citizens in Atlantis, and we walked into the night in Atlantis in different wards with different neighborhood watches. And at the end of the day, the citizens say the same thing. Genoeg is genoeg. Ons kan nie meer nie. And, you know, they've had enough of the gangsters. They've had enough of the crime. They've had to please help us do something. Now, I'm going to talk to the numbers shortly of officers and who's responsible for what, and the comments I hear about the safety plan. But you know, Speaker, if we are to stop the criminals who bring so much death and misery to our communities, we have to work
Honorable
together.
Premier, are you able to take your seat? Honorable Syed, this is a point of order.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, is the Premier prepared to take a question on the reasons for having removed you as the MEC for Community Safety, given that we've got this dire consequence? Thank you.
Honorable Premier, the Premier is not prepared to take your question. Please proceed.
But I can say, if you look at this debate, somebody from outside and listen to that frivolous, idiotic question that he's just asked, it just shows that people are not prepared to talk
Honorable,
about the high levels of crime that we have in
honorable members, this is the final speaker. This is the final speaker for this important debate. This is a political debate. This is a political debate. I take your concerns. I take the concerns that were raised. So let me, Honorable Nkwensu.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I don't think that in this House you can allow white boycott. And therefore, for that, the Premier has to withdraw.
Honorable members. Honorable members, I will remind members that if there is any particular matter, members are allowed to bring a substantive motion in that regard. I will recognize the Premier. 5 minutes and 54 seconds remaining of this vital debate. Honorable Premier, please proceed.
I wanted them to replace these people.
I've not recognized the Minister. I've seen the Premier. Honorable Premier, please proceed.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Speaker. I also want to say that last week when we were in the debate, I mentioned that I'd messaged the new Minister of Police And I actually had a conversation with him last Thursday night, and I'm very happy to announce that next Thursday at 2 o'clock, I will be meeting with the minister. And we will be talking about exactly these issues, because we have to work together. If we don't work together and bring about different ways of doing things, we will not get results. But you know what, Speaker? The problem is no one listens to the facts. The facts are that the budget for SAPS over the last years has only increased by 3.1%. That is below inflation rate. Now, the city of Cape Town has had to catch up and try and defend and cover. Their budget for law enforcement has increased by 34%. 34%. You know, I want to say that we've heard the numbers now. The real crisis in our province is the vacancy rate in SAPS, the number of deployed officers that are on the ground. Also, he says also in our government, there are 12,900 police officers on the ground in this province. 12,900. 12,900. There were 20,000 6 years ago. Almost double. And we should have 3 times that on the ground if we're serious about fighting crime. And we can't deploy. We cannot deploy. Go and have a look at the crime hotspots and where the deployment takes place. They've got less police officers deployed. We can't make that decision. I'd make it today, but we can't make the decision. It's made by the police who's run by the ANC. And we need to change that. We need to change that. You know, if I look at parolees and talk to the citizens, if I listen to what's being said here, parolees is a massive issue. And look at the number of criminal activities and murders that take place where parolees are involved. And you know, that's a simple thing to sort out. Put a tracker on that parolee for their parole period. You know, at home, my wife's got a tracker on our cat. You can track each other on your phone. But we can't track a parolee, and they rape again. They rape again. They murder again. Track these parolees. And of course, let the victims know that those parolees are out again, because those victims become victims again. It is totally unacceptable. The Honorable Ngwensu spoke about the MOU. He's obviously not.
Honorable members, Premier, please take your seat. Chief Whip, please take your seat. Honorable members, you are drowning out the speaker. You are drowning out the speaker. There's shouting, there's finger pointing. No, Honorable Nkwensu, the Premier is going to proceed. Honorable members, we need to maintain the decorum of the House. There's persons in the gallery as well as those watching online. I see the Premier.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. The Honourable Ngwensu, when he spoke about the number.
Honourable Premier, please take your seat. Before you take your point of order, honourable members, I'm wanting to caution members that if any particular member is going to be rowdy, I will name you. I'm looking that side as well. I will name members, and I will make a determination that if it comes to number 2 and number 3, I will ask that you leave the chamber. And I'm also not going to entertain frivolous points of orders. Having said that, I wouldn't want to influence what Member Syed is about to say. So I recognize Member Syed.
Yeah, please. I know you better and I respect you. The work you did as a MEC was much better than what we are seeing now. But let me say, is it parliamentary for the Premier to compare human beings who are being butchered to cats, to animals? I mean, really, that's not parliamentary.
Honorable Syed. Honorable Syed. Honorable Syed and honorable members, we will proceed. We will proceed with the debate with 2 minutes and 54 seconds. Premier, please proceed.
Thank you. The Honorable Gwensu spoke about the guns, and he spoke about a few guns that were found in Mitchell's Plain. Have a look at the automatic rifles found in the taxi violence investigations. But let's look at the facts and the data. He said, where's the data? Over the last 12 years, 26,025 firearms have been lost or stolen from the South African police as per the SAPS report. 26,000 guns. What are they doing about that? Where are the arrests? How can that even be tolerated? Unbelievable. Then, of course, it's quite interesting of the comments on the safety plan. So I want to say two things on the safety plan. First of all, I want to say that where people are deployed, where the LEAP officers are deployed, it's very simple. The data is there. They are deployed in Delft, in Gugulethu, in Khayelitsha, in Mitchell's Plain, in Nyanga, and Philippi East. Very simple. And the challenge to all of the political parties are asking about LEAP, I challenge you to go and ask the station commanders in each of those police precincts whether they would like LEAP to discontinue. I challenge you, and bring that to me, and then we'll engage. I challenge you to do that, because I'm on the ground. You obviously are not on the ground, because you don't speak to these police officers at all. So then I want to say, in the last minute or so that I've got left, and listening to the debate, quite frankly, I mean, I heard the Honorable Kasim say that there's false data on LEAP. I mean, she obviously is not reading the documents or asking for special discussions in the standing committee. Leaders are readers. And then she says the quarterly stats don't exist anymore. Well, the last quarterly stats were put out on the 23rd of May, 2025. And in actual fact, police gave us stats last week and Wednesday, the 27th of August, 2025. And there is nothing stopping the standing committee to ask SAPS to please come and give an update on the data and the statistics. Nothing stopping them whatsoever. So please start to read the documents before you make these frivolous comments in a debate like this. And then, obviously, because of the time, I'd like to say to the Honourable Heron, please do exactly the same thing. Read this, Policing Needs and Priorities. Go and have a look at the Safer School program, the fencing, the lighting programs. Go and have a look at Chrysalis and Yebones. Go look at Planet Youth. Go and look at the first 1,000 days program. Go and look at the SWIMS app and the DSD programs. Everything that he was talking about, he obviously doesn't read any of it. And then he keeps asking the same question over and over again. I want to reiterate, these kind of things don't help us fight crime. We've got to do this together. We need to change the model of policing because the current one does not work. We've got to change it. And devolution and getting investigators and detectives is probably the first move that we should get right.
Thank you, Honorable Premier. Honorable members, that concludes the subject for discussion. I did not want to welcome the guest prior. I did not want to welcome the guest during the debate, but please feel welcomed into the chamber. Honorable members. Honorable members.
Honorable.
I recognize the Honorable Minister.
Speaker, we have special guests in the house. We have a special guest in the house. Can you ask them to please stand? We welcome them.
Honorable. I will address that point of order now. I see the Honorable Syed.
Point of order, Chair. I'm not sure, maybe the technical team can explain. But Honorable MEC Mayor rises and he speaks from another mic. Perhaps if the mic's not working, it should be sorted out. But that is because I remember the Premier cautioned me when I just became an MPL in my second sitting. I was cautioned for doing the same.
Thank you.
So please, on the level of consistency.
Thank you so much.
Honorable,
Honorable Minister, please take your seat.
I apologize. Sorry, my mic is now working. I apologize that I was addressing the honorable members in the gallery from a seat that was not here. Can I now, from my seat?
You must address the chair, but please take your seat. Honorable
I
Chief
welcome
Whip of the official opposition, I will recognize you now.
Friends.
Honorable Minister, please take your seat. Honorable members, I'm not aware. Honorable members, those in the gallery on my right were duly welcomed in the beginning of the sitting. During the debate, guests seated on my left then arrived. I did not want during the speakers to welcome the guest on the left. I sincerely trust that everyone in the gallery is now thoroughly welcomed. Honorable members, the debate has concluded. I trust that we will maintain the decorum of the House. And before we proceed in terms of Rule 197 to interpellations as printed on the order paper, I wish to inform the honorable members that in terms of Standing Rule 1965, the honorable member Barnes has been authorized to take charge of the interpellation as printed on the question paper in the name of the honorable Lekker. I now recognize the honorable Minister, Minister Simmers.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair, and through you to the member who will be deliberating on a member's behalf.
Honorable Minister, please take your seat. I assumed, please forgive me. I now recognize you.
A correction, Deputy Speaker. We have reported to the Programming Authority that the Honorable Lekker will be replaced by Member Rachel van Vogel, that is on the platform.
Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Please, let me first recognize you. Please take your seat. Honorable members, we are needing to make sure that a number of items as per our order paper is dealt with today. So let me see the Honorable Chief Whip before I rule.
Honorable Speaker, just for the record and for importance, the Honorable Syed in the Programming Authority asked for the interpellation to be withdrawn, so that will reflect on the minutes of the Programming Authority. But the Honorable Barnes, the Chief Whip of the Opposition, wrote to the Secretary to ask that Honorable Windvogel take charge of the matter on behalf of Honorable Lekker. So just for correction, that's the sequence of events. Just in case it reflects inaccurately on the minutes, we don't want people questioning.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chief Whip. Honorable members, the order paper has been printed. The Honorable Windvogel will take the opportunity as print as on the order paper. So I recognize the Honorable Minister.
It's in order, Chris. What I can see. Deputy Speaker, through you to the honourable member, my department actually spent our entire Human Settlements Development Grant and Informal Settlement Upgrading Partnership Grant, which was available to us. However, it should be noted that at the end of February 2025, both the HSDG and ISUPG were incorrectly reduced by 200 million and 100 million rand, respectively. While the implementation of some phases of large projects could be delayed, accrued payments for March 2025 were paid in the 2025-2026 financial year, which will have an impact on funding available to initiate new projects. The Western Cape Province was initially allocated 1.605 billion rand under the HSDG and 382.315 million under the ISUPG for the 2024-2025 financial year. However, following a national reduction to the provincial human settlements budget, both grant allocations were reduced by 300 million rand cumulatively. My department's human settlements program still managed, however, to meet targets despite the unilateral reduction in national conditional grant allocations, compromising a 200 million rand cut to the human settlements development grant and a 100 million rand cut to the informal settlements upgrading partnership grant. My department still provided 4,779 housing opportunities against an HSDC business plan target of 4,845 and serviced 3,181 sites against an allocation spent a target of 2,801, despite the 200 million rand reduction in allocation with a total spend of 1.405 billion rand from the HSDG. My department serviced 1,672 sites against an ISUPG business plan target of 1,527, with a total budget spend of 282.35 million rand. So it's incorrect to say that we have underspent and not delivered. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I now recognize the Honourable Win Vogel.
Honourable Speaker, the housing crisis in the Western Cape is not an accident. It is a direct consequence of the DA-led government's systematic neglect and its application of what can only be described as apartheid 2.0, a modern day segregation where the poor, predominantly African and colored communities, are condemned to economic exclusion and spatial injustice. This is a consequence strategy of marginalization where the government failures to act is a de facto policy outcome, maintaining the status quo of inequality. The facts are damning. In the 2024-2025 financial year, this province was entrusted with 1.6 billion in the Human Settlement Development Grant and 282 million for the informal settlements upgrading partnership grant. These were not mere budget lines. They were a lifeline for the hundreds of thousands living in squalor in over 683 informal settlements in Cape Town alone, 186 of which emerged since the pandemic, many in hazardous flood plains and without basic sanitation. Yet, by August 2024, the DA's Department of Infrastructure had betrayed that trust, particularly spending shamefully low amounts on the 8 SDG and the ISUPG. Most concerning, they forfeited 300 million, money meant for toilets, water, and houses, because they do not have urgency to build human settlements for the poor. This is not poor planning. It is a profound demonstration that the DA does not care about the poor. This understanding is a political choice, revealing a government that is utterly disconnected from the daily suffering of our people who face sex fires, unemployment, and the indignity of a life without basic services. This failure is compounded by brazen fiscal dishonesty, a suspicious 543 million spending spike in the last quarter of 2024 exposes a desperate attempt at fiscal dumping, not genuine delivery. These funds were misdirected to unauthorized items like security services and unaudited subsidies, in blatant violation of the housing code. This is a government that would rather waste money on protecting its image and on irregular expenditure than spend it on building homes for the people. It is shameful indictment of their
Honourable Win
priorities.
Vogel, kindly conclude.
I hope this chairperson of SCOPA is listening. I thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Win Vogel. I see the Honourable Wessels.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, human settlements are central to a better future for our communities. They are central to create stability, dignity, and economic opportunity. And it is clear that the demand for housing will continue to grow, which makes timely delivery more important than ever. This said, we also know the province is under immense fiscal burden, with pressure stemming predominantly from population growth and lackluster national funding. Herewith my question, Speaker. What is the real state of delivery today, and what measures are being taken to safeguard future housing opportunities in the challenging fiscal environment? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Wessels. I recognize the Honourable Win Vogel.
Deputy Speaker, the depth of this government failure extends beyond mere underspending into outright defiance of national law and frameworks. The Western Cape government is operating outside the rules designed to protect public funds and ensure delivery. This isn't just incompetence, it is a willful violation of the social contract and a betrayal of public trust. 17 projects were implemented without approved business plans. Expenditure was channeled through non-accredited municipalities, violating the Division of Revenue Act and National Treasury regulations. Their reporting was unverified and the revised plan were weak, contradictory and non-compliant. This is a government that believes it is about the law, prioritizes its own political agenda and optics over the constitutional rights of citizens to adequate housing. When held accountable by National Department, their response was not remorse, but litigation and misdirection, a clear sign of guilty conscience and a government that has something to hide. Therefore, we must ask the Premier and the MEC, what are the specific lawful reasons for your department underspending of conditional grants? And why did you violate the national frameworks by implementing projects without approved business plans? What immediate measures will you put in place to prevent further fiscal dumping, recover misuse funds, and guarantee that every future cent is spent lawfully and directly on alleviating the housing backlog, not on illegal expenditure? How will you ensure that the hundreds of thousands of households on the waiting list see tangible progress, not just empty promises? The people of the Western Cape are living in sex under power lines and in floodplain. They are watching money meant for them be forfeited and misused. This is shameful direction of duty. The DA's legacy is one of empty promises, legal threats, and a cold indifference to suffering. They have chosen to manage poverty instead of empowering people. This House and the province deserve answers. Accountability is not optional. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Windvogel. I recognize the Minister.
Deputy Speaker, I will be very, very slow in my response so the honourable member of the ANC can understand. First and foremost, the question relates to 2024-25. My department did not underspend. Her national minister, who I think does not understand mathematics, unilaterally, without proper consultation, took 300 million. And we are now having to, with the accrued payments, we paid out in March 2025, which is the 2025-26 financial year. So I can quote our actual deliverables, because we did not change our targets. They took the money. Nobody broke the law. In terms of the HSDG grant, Honourable Deputy Speaker, we had a target for 2024-25 of 4,845 top structures. We delivered 4,779. But the HSDG grant also funds the installation of services and sites. We had a target of 2,801. The actual number of service sites we delivered was 3,181. Then you have the ISUPG grant, which focuses on informal settlements. Our target was 1,527 service sites. Even with the unilateral cut, we delivered 1,672 service sites. So the member needs to get the facts straight. If she was reading from a speech, please ask your speechwriter to get their facts straight. Honourable Vessels, you ask a very good question, because in terms of human settlements, but more so housing delivery, context actually does form a massive part of understanding our sector. And we need to understand that between 2014 and 2019, the Western Cape received on average 2.3 billion rand a year for human settlements. Since 2019, our allocation has declined, not because we weren't able to deliver, because the ANC national minister just allocated less to this province, even though we could prove that we were able to spend even more than 2.3 billion. So, despite all of this happening with our province since 2019, if I include the Q1 of 25-26 financial year, we have actually delivered to date over 57,000 housing opportunities. This is houses, it's first home finance, it is service sites, it's individual subsidies. It's not fiscal dumping. We have actually delivered what we set out to do and even exceeded our own targets. But if I am to compare the budget that I am getting today as the minister, which I must now account for, in real terms, if I include inflation, this budget which I must deliver with and my department must deliver with to the poor of this province is 30 to 35% smaller than it was in 2019. But again, as jy nie wiskunde verstaan nie, jy verstaan nie as eibed wiskunde nie, dan gaan jy nooit verstaan wat ek vandag hier probeer sê nie. So despite all of this, Deputy Speaker, we are still delivering. If you measure our performance per billion spent, this province, compared to any other province, actually delivers more with less. And that is why we continuously are asking, give us the fair share of what is due to this province. We have proven with difficulties and even changes in our budget mid-year, even twice in the mid-year, we still deliver. So it's time that the minister and the deputy minister compatu. We accept the reality of our province. We govern better, we ensure we deliver better because we are for our people. Thank you.
Honourable members, that is the end of the interpellation. We will now deal with questions as printed on the question paper. I wish to advise honourable members that once the Honourable Minister or the Premier has started the reply to the oral question as printed on the question paper, honourable members must use the chat facility for the sitting of the House to indicate all those that are in the chamber by signalling to me. There are 4 opportunities for follow-up questions, but the honourable member who has posed the initial question as printed on the order paper will get the first opportunity for a follow-up. Thereafter, other honourable members may then use the remaining opportunities to ask a follow-up question. I now recognise the Honourable Premier.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable Barnes for the question. While the latest quarterly labour force survey, or QLFS, does indicate a quarter-on-quarter increase in unemployment, it is crucial to analyse labour market trends over a longer-term horizon to gain a more complete perspective. On a year-on-year basis, from Q2 2024 to Q2 2025, the unemployment rate in the Western Cape has in fact decreased from 22.2% down to 21.1%, with the Western Cape now home to 69,000 more jobs than the same period last year. The Western Cape continues to lead the nation in the majority of key metrics of employment and continues to demonstrate a broad unemployment rate that is more than 5% lower than the next province's narrow unemployment rate, let alone narrow to narrow or broad to broad, which is in excess of 10%. The Western Cape continues to do better in employment, even when judged against more stringent criteria than any other province. This demonstrates underlying resilience and positive momentum in our provincial economy, even amidst short-term fluctuations caused by seasonal change and a turbulent global trade environment. The Growth for Jobs strategy is fundamentally designed to be a long-term framework that addresses the systemic barriers to economic growth. It is core premise, namely, that the government's primary role is to create an enabling environment that accelerates growth and empowers individuals and businesses to seize the economic opportunities, remains unchanged and highly relevant. The strategy continues to recognize the private sector as a primary driver of sustainable job creation and government's role in creating the necessary conditions for job creation to take place at a sustainable scale. Therefore, rather than requiring reactive adjustment to short-term data, the strategy's strength lies in its consistent and proactive implementation, which has thus far proved successful. It is structured to weather quarterly volatility by focusing on the foundational pillars of a growing economy. It is important to recognize that the Western Cape economy does not operate in a vacuum. The Western Cape's economy operates within the same global economic environment as the national economy and is not immune to external shocks like tariffs, global economic shutdowns, and supply chain constraints. The G4J strategy prioritizes the systemic reform to the economy, whose full benefits will accrue over time through complementary interventions and sustained private sector absorption of labor. To this end, the Western Cape has consistently remained at the forefront of South Africa's labor market participation, with a participation rate of 67.9% and the highest absorption rate at 53.5% as at Q2 2025. Nonetheless, we take any increase in unemployment seriously, and we will continue to monitor the labor market closely. Employment trends such as this rise in unemployment will continue to be closely monitored and analyzed to deepen understanding of the Western Cape's economic trajectory, ensuring that the strategy remains grounded in real-world labor market dynamics, as a core focus remains on enabling the private sector to grow. And then B, the Western Cape will continue to prioritize and implement the Growth for Jobs strategy to ensure businesses of all sizes can expand and employ people. Our priority interventions focusing on removing the key blockages to growth. For example, the red tape reduction. In the interest of time, I won't go through all of the red tape reduction cases. The energy resilience program, because of course, when there's no energy, we see it across our country, the impact on economic growth and on business confidence. So we will continue with energy resilience. We'll also continue with water and sustainable water supply. Also enhancing access to finance and business support. In collaboration with the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, our SMME Accelerator Support Program is directly enhancing access to finance and providing customized incubation in the Western Cape SMEs. This intervention is already showing positive results, with 98 businesses having registered for and commenced with the online training by the end of July 2025. Alongside creating job-friendly environments, we are prioritizing interventions that connect people to opportunities. There's a focused set of targeted interventions, specifically with Priority 7. This improves access to economic opportunities, which are designed to expand pathways into employment, entrepreneurship, and skills development across all sectors of the province. Flagship initiatives include the career guidance and life orientation programs in high schools, which expose learners to diverse industries, equip them with essential life skills, and help reduce the skills mismatch through informed subject choices. The school specialization model, this is particularly in the STEAM subjects, also key linked to the G4J strategy. The post-school interventions will focus on stimulating entrepreneurship, expanding experiential learning opportunities. This is internships such as the Year Beyond program or the Township Action program. And it should be noted that the Growth for Jobs strategy as a whole does not function in a vacuum, as I have said, and forms part or central part of the Western Cape's Provincial Strategic Plan, which is the 2025-2030 plan, which is available online. Thank you.
I recognize the Honorable Barnes.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, while appreciating the figures given by the Premier, one has to ask that in 2024, the Premier set a target of 800,000 jobs opportunities that will be rolled out. Perhaps if the Premier can just take us into confidence as to what were those projections informed by, and also from the 800,000, how far are we now? What are the numbers of jobs that have already been implemented? Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
I recognize the Premier.
Thank you very much. And of course, all of this links to the areas where growth of jobs happens. And a really interesting piece of data is the jobs that are growing within the back office processing space here in the region. And I was looking at these job statistics. And of course, the most jobs created in the BPO sector, 16% of all jobs in BPO in the city region is just short of 11,000 jobs in Mitchell's Plain, 10,000 jobs in Khayelitsha, about 7,000 jobs in Langa, 6,000 jobs in Athlone, Hanover Park, 5,500, and so it goes through. I mean, you've got all of these numbers: Elsie's River, Grassy Park, Kraaifontein, Sea Point, Durbanville, Belleville, and so it goes down all of these spaces, which is the data of where those jobs are being created. And then specifically, I was looking, and I really ask the honourable member to go and have a look at the quarterly labour force document. I mean, it's a substantial document put out by Stats SA, and the real interesting thing for me is how there's a change in the jobs in our region. So, of course, the jobs by Stats SA are broken down by race, and if you have a look at the jobs growth in South Africa over the last 5 years. So this is quarter 1, 2020 to quarter 1, 2025. So it's the last 5 years. In African jobs created in South Africa, the growth rate is 8.5% and 1.580 million new jobs. If you look at the same for the Western Cape, it is 16.9% growth rate in jobs. That is substantially more, in actual fact, double the national average for jobs created for Africans. Then amongst colored people, it is 3.2% nationally. And of course, in our province, it's 9.1%. And amongst white jobs nationally, it's minus 5.9%. And in this province, it's positive 9.1%. But so basically, those two categories at a growth of 9.1%. But the interesting statistic is not the percentage, it's actually the numbers. So the number of jobs created in the region are 44,000 white jobs and 128,000 jobs in colored communities. And you see, and if you look at that and you take those statistics and you look at then break it down even further into a sector like BPO statistics, it really shows you that these interventions are starting to create the right balance in the number of jobs that are created within the province. And so it links through to that end target. And that end target is a 2035 target. We need to get our growth rate up to 4 to 6%. Already, the minister is looking at that again, because our problem is the biggest handbrake at the moment in growth rates is what is happening overall to our economy, where in South Africa, our economy is not even growing at 0.1%. In the province, it's higher. It's just under 1%. But this is the issue. Well, it's 8-9 times more than the national average growth rate in all the other provinces put together. So she mustn't laugh. She must look at the data and read the documents, and it's great. Oh, no, she's not got oversight anymore. I really am upset about that, because we need her party to have a look that they are not reading the documents properly to understand the data before they make the comments that are made here in our parliament. Those are really critical. Because, of course, exactly as in the crime space, where we all have to work together, we should all be putting shoulder to the wheel to get economic growth happening in our country and in our province, because that is the biggest antidote to unemployment.
Honourable members, before I recognize the following question, before I recognize the following person to ask a question, I would just want to caution members again. It is one question per follow-up. I see the Honourable Murray.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Premier for the opportunity. Speaker, I'm going to ask the one question that you limit us to. Honourable Premier, in terms of your growth for jobs strategy, I wanted to know if you have also identified a program that will tap into the AI and digital age sector, where it is a game changer in terms of employment opportunities, because especially in the rural areas where there's lack of opportunities, but nowadays with online access to online services, you can generate an income beyond the borders of South Africa. And so I wanted to know if you have any program or focused program to tap into that sector to create employment opportunities for young people. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I recognize the Premier, I would want the record to reflect it is not me saying, it is the rules, honourable members. I saw the previous person that that asked a question was very quick to ask a double barrel question, hence the caution. So I see the Honourable Premier.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Honourable Marais for that question. It's actually a very pertinent question because in our cabinet, in last Wednesday, our cabinet actually approved our AI strategy, talking about the guardrails that need to be put in place, but also looking at opportunities. And it's very interesting to see how many, first of all, of our departments are already embracing AI, looking at the role that AI is going to play within our departments and around service delivery, understanding what is happening in the system so that we can be more responsive, but also making sure that we're building to strategies that have guardrails, because that's also really important. We can't allow the destruction of the system if we don't have those guardrails in place. But then what are the programs? I'll just tell you about one. I joined the Minister's Department yesterday, the day before. I joined the Minister's Department with a partnership program that's happening with the mayor and the Atlanta region in Georgia, which is a partner of this province, a state partner of this province. And this was in the arts, in the culture arena, in what I call the experiential economy. And it's very interesting because when you look at the top fastest declining jobs in the world, and of course we have to base everything we do on data and evidence, it's something that we always do. So you'll see postal service clerks, #1, declining jobs in South Africa. You'll see bank tellers and related clerks. You'll see data entry clerks, cashiers, ticket clerks, administration and administrative assistants. You'll see printing and related trades. You'll see accounting, bookkeeping and payroll clerks. You'll see material recording and stock keeping. And so I can go on down to claims adjusters, legal officials, legal secretaries. It really is the list of the jobs at risk. And on the other side, you see the big data specialists, the fintech engineers, the AI and machine learning specialists, the software and applications. And the interesting thing in that focus of our Department of Economic Development is they are focusing on areas that is not mentioned in a declining job space here. They are zooming in on what are those areas that we need to be empowering, we need to be enabling, we need entrepreneurs. And so this was an incubator space in partnership with the UNDP, in partnership with an organization out of Atlanta called Snake Nation, in partnership with the CDI, and really is direct interventions. And of course, that's why we've got to be a responsive government. We've got to look for these things that are going to make sure that we understand that AI is going to have a massive impact globally, in our country and in our province. And I think we are the first province, regional government on the African continent to have passed such a document.
I recognize the Honourable Bryant.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It was great to hear in terms of the Premier's response that despite the quarterly labour force survey, the Western Cape still maintains the lowest unemployment rate and it's consistently dropping. But my question to the Premier is if he can maybe just expand a little bit in terms of the DA-led governance model for the province and what it is about that governance model and the service delivery that is leading to this constant decrease in unemployment, and whether other provinces can learn from this. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So obviously, I think if you had to take that question, the key strategy would be how we become the enabler for the private sector, because the private sector is where you create jobs. You've got to enable it. You've got to cut the red tape. You've got to attract investment. And then you've got to also understand what the blockages are. So if you read the document, the G4J document, you will see it's quite clear. It is about how do we get our ports to operate? How do we get our goods to market? How do we grow that market? Have a look at what the minister does and his whole drive around gaining new market share, around moving the needle from less than 50% of South Africa's agri-exports coming to this province, now sitting at 67 and on its way to 60% of all of South Africa. I mean, 57, 58%, on its way to 60% of the whole country's agricultural exports out of this province. So really it is about saying, understanding what those blockages, enabling the private sector, whether it's in ports, whether it's in rail. I think the plan with the presidency and Vudendlela is just showing you exactly how those kind of programs should be coming together. And then as what else I said about the red tape interventions, or going down to those smaller structural and sort of SMME type interventions. And all of that helps us raise the tide. But then, of course, it's also, have we got energy? Have we got water? Those are the key bases for any economy anywhere in the world, and we've got to make sure we get it right. And the infrastructure shortfall and lack of maintenance across our country has probably been one of the biggest negative drivers of why our unemployment rates have been so high in South Africa. So I mean, it's common. Everybody can look at it. You can see it. We all feel it. So we've got to make sure that we turn that around.
I recognize the Honourable Walters.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Just the kind of growth plan that's referred to here in the question, and also the emphasis or the potential of AI that was mentioned earlier, is reliant on energy, expansion of energy, expansion of electricity production. And perhaps if the Premier can just indicate to us whether energy generation is part of the economic growth plan. We obviously cannot rely on a historically failing national government. So we need to build that in our provincial strategy. I would love to hear his response.
I recognize the Premier.
Thank you to the honourable member for that question. Obviously, there's two sides to the energy need. I mean, of course, we all need energy all the time, but AI tools, there are AI tools that use very little energy, and kind of the AI tools that are in apps on our phones, etc., that make us more productive, that enable us as citizens to do more. And then, of course, there's the other side of the equation, and that is linked to big data and data centers. And it's interesting to see more and more data centers investing in this region. And the driver there is their energy, because that is critical. If we don't have the energy, we can't have the data centers. And so the smelters of the kind of last century, the big energy users, that's the old economy. The new economy is the innovations that are coming in, like big data, and how that enables economic activity. And then in between, I've just come, Minister May and I have just come back from meeting the business people and we actually had a meeting at the Amazon building. And it was interesting to see even their programs in Amazon and how they are enabling SMMEs to get market access. Because an entrepreneur's got an idea and a product. How do you get it to market, and how do you enable that to get to market? But all of that needs electricity and energy. And when you look at the Eskom 4,000 megawatts that they supply into the province, that is our peak, and you add to that 5,700 megawatts, which is what is coming in from the private sector, we will have more than enough electricity by 2032, and then watch the investment that comes into the region, because you'll have security of energy, you'll have an oversupply. Supply and demand rules in economics say that our energy pricing will then be very much more competitive than any other region in sub-Saharan Africa.
Honourable members, that concludes question 1 of the 4 opportunities. I now recognize the Honourable Minister Barkman.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. In terms of 2.A, the intergovernmental agreement was concluded on the 19th of March 2024. In terms of 2.B, the agreement between the National Treasury, Department of Public Service and Administration and the Western Cape Provincial Government resolved that the integrity and credibility of budgets, once approved, are sacrosanct and can only be amended in year in terms of the prevailing framework. Unforeseen economic and fiscal shocks that necessitate an amendment to the budget be effected through proper consultation with affected organs of state. to develop a procedure for consultation at Budget Council and other appropriate intergovernmental forums, to review the process of consultation regarding the wage negotiations to ensure effective participation of affected parties, to determine prior to the signing of a wage agreement which organs of state, organs of state will be funding the cost. Timelines shall apply to future wage negotiations to ensure finalization prior to the annual and MTF budget process. That the quantification of budget shortfalls, including the methodology of calculating such, will be an item of discussion within the relevant intergovernmental forums. In terms of 2 subsection C, Deputy Speaker, I'm going to answer the Roman numeral 1, the Roman numeral 2, double A and double B collectively. It is statistical information or information of a statistical nature that was asked. So it's in an Excel format. So I'll just quickly run through those particular items. The 2.6 billion rand reduction over the 2024 MTF per vote is as follows. I will start with 2024-25, and then I will go to 25-26, 2026-27, and then the respective total. For vote 1, Department of the Premier, 2024-2025, it was 30.42 million rand. 2025-26, 31.268 million rand. 2026-2027, 34.841 million rand. The total for the MTF is 96.529 million rand. Vote 2, Deputy Speaker, that is Provincial Parliament, 2024-25 is 3.185 million rand. 2025-26 is 3.159 million rand. 2026-2027 is 3.520 million rand, and the total for the MTF is 9.864 million rand. For vote 3, Provincial Treasury, 2024-2025 is 5.73 million rand. 2025-2026 is 5.633 million rand. 2026-2027 is 6.277 million rand. The total for the MTF, Deputy Speaker, is 17.640 million rand. Vote 4, which is Police Oversight and Community Safety. For 2024, it is 6.083 million rand. 2025, it is 11.314 million rand. 2026, it is 12.607 million rand. For the MTF, it is 30.003 million rand. Vote 5, it is Education. For 2024-25, it's 360.103 million rand. 2025-2026 is 352.194 million rand. 2026-2027, 392.447 million rand. And for the MTF, it is 1.104744 billion rand. Health and Wellness, vote 6, 2024-2025, 301.724 million rand. 2025-2026, 295.785 million rand. 2026-2027, 329.591 million rand. And for the MTF, it is 927.1 million rand. Vote 7, Social Development, it's for 2024-2025, 42.152 million rand. For 2025-2026 is 41.981 million rand. 2026-2027 is 46.779 million rand. And for the MTF, it is 130.911 million rand. For vote 8, that is Mobility, for 2024-2025, it's 15.897 million rand. 2025-2026, 15.825 million rand. 2026-2027, 17.634 million rand. The total for the MTF is 49.356 million rand. For vote 9, Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, 2024-2025, it is 10.324 million rand. 2025-2026, 10.288 million rand. 2026-2027, 11.463 million rand. The total for the MTF is 32.075 million rand. For vote 10, Infrastructure, 2024-2025, 42.339 million rand. 2025-2026, 41.429 million rand. 2026-2027, 46.164 million rand. And the total for the MTF is 129.932 million rand. Vote 11, agriculture. For 2024-2025, it was 12.429 million rand. 2025-2026, 12.468 million rand. 2026-2027, 13.893 million rand, and the total for the MTEF is 38.789 million rand. For vote 12, economic development and tourism, 2024-2025, it was 8.556 million rand. 2025-2026, 8.524 million rand. 2026-2027, 9.498 million rand. The total for the MTIF is 26.578 million rand. For vote 13, cultural affairs and sport, 2024-2025 was 10.731 million rand. 2025-2026, 10.649 million rand. 2026-2027, 11.866 million rand. And the total for the MTIF is 33.246 million rand. For vote 14, local government, Deputy Speaker is 2024-2025, 6.117 million rand. 2025-2026, 6.224 million rand. 2026-2027, 6.935 million rand. And the total for the MTIF was 19.277 million rand. The total for the 2024-2025 MTIF for all the votes in totality was therefore 855.789 a million rand. The totality for the 14 votes in 2025-2026 in its totality was 846.740 million rand. For 2026-2027, the total was 943.515 million rand, and the total for the MTIF, which relates to the 2.6 billion rand reduction, was overall 2.64645 billion rand. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I recognize the Honourable Heron.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for the answer to the questions. My follow-up question is, given everything that we know, and as set out now by the Minister, what we knew in March 2024, how did the Western Cape Education Department's budget suddenly have a 3.8 billion rand shortfall when the reduction to the budget baseline was 1.1 billion over the 2024 MTIF?
I recognize the Honourable Minister.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. I do know in terms of the response to the oral question on the 8th of May 2025, we have also published this data previously. As noted that the 3.8 billion rand shortfall that was reported was forecasted at the time, and through various mechanisms, including dealing with the excess, for example, of the teachers, the forecast was able to come down in terms of that particular budget. However, the shortfall was also dealt with in the adjustment budget as tabled last year, and I'd wish to refer the member also to the additional funding that was tabled in the adjustment budget of the Western Cape for 2024. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
I see the Honourable Heron.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, in about August 2023, the basket of posts for teachers or educators was determined. The budget was presented to Parliament in March 2024. At that time, we knew that there was a wage increase. We knew that there was a reduction in the provincial equitable share. So the 3.8 billion rand that was announced in August 2020, the shortfall that was announced in August 2024 must have been known to the Minister of Finance at the time. So I have to ask the Minister to repeat her answer as to how that 3.8 billion rand was not known or was not disclosed in March 2024.
I recognize the Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I know that on the same oral question previously in May, a question was asked regarding the compliance of the budget, and the response to this provincial parliament for the 8th of May 2025, and I know in other oral questions as well, was that the budget was compliant. Now, when you have fiscal consolidation, we are talking about the fiscal consolidation for everyone, and then everyone has respective reductions. The 2023 MTEF and 2024 MTEF, Deputy Speaker, is also different MTEFs. This particular question that was asked to myself today refers to the 2024 MTEF. However, I'm just quickly going to repeat. I know that we didn't necessarily get to my previous oral question on the 14th of August, and the respective information was published, therefore, in writing to the Provincial Parliament. But I'll just quickly go through where we end up at the 2.6. So the total reduction, because the total provincial equitable share, the PES reduction for the 2024 MTEF was 6.7 billion rand. That amounted to the 2.2 billion in 2024-25, to 2.2 billion rand in 2025-2026, and 2.3 billion rand in 2026-27. That then comprised, so now we're going to break down the 6.7, that comprised of 6.358 billion rand of fiscal consolidation reduction for a direct baseline cut imposed nationally to address budget deficit pressures, and 380 million rand for the impact of new data technical updates to the PES formula. Then, in terms of the further adjustments to the reduction of the baseline after the 2023 MTBPS and how a reduction was funded, it was published as part of the previous oral question that no further reduction, there was no further reduction post the 2023 MTBPS, and that the 6.7 billion rand reduction on the PES over the 2024 MTEF was funded with 4.1 billion rand from various sources such as underspending, over collection of own revenue from 2022 to 2023, tax overruns in the 2022-23 financial year, interest earnings, and fiscal stabilization reserve, as well as then the 2.6 billion rand reduction of votes of the 2024 MTEF baseline. Today's question then zooms in as a follow-up question, I would assume, on the last sentence from the previous oral question, which I tabled in the Provincial Parliament for the 14th of August, dealing with the 2.6 billion rand. The particular question that the member asked me today in terms of that section was, what are the details of the 2.6 billion rand reduction of the votes in the 2024 MTEF baselines, and which votes, I went through the votes, Deputy Speaker, were reduced. I indicated which ones were reduced and by what amount. I indicated what was the amount that was reduced. If there is new information that the member wants, I would like to encourage the member to please submit a question, and we're happy to go look to see if what particularly in the new question is the member would like to ask, because everything that I've been asked so far we have already answered today and tabled previously in the Western Cape Provincial Parliament. Thank you.
The third opportunity is the Honourable Van Wyk.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I would just like to ask the Minister that, given the significant fiscal strain on the province and its budget, what innovative financial mechanisms the Provincial Treasury is pursuing to help alleviate this crisis. Thank you.
I will allow the Minister to consider to respond, considering the wording of that particular question. Honourable Minister.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker, for the questions. In terms of innovative financial mechanisms, something that we have adopted and launched as a Western Cape government includes what we call an alternative and blended financing framework. So as members would know, that we are under severe fiscal strain in our country and as a province as well, as budgets are not growing at the rate they should be growing. In the Western Cape province, for example, when you look at the amount of money you get from national, and it's quite similar across provinces, more than 95% of our budget comes from the national government, and just under 5% or almost 5%.
Are you raising a point of order, the Honourable Human?
Mr. Speaker, if you reference with the question, the main question is very specific. It's on intergovernmental dispute on a matter that was discussed on the 14th. This is a new question, general, about alternative financing. If you continue in this manner, then you must not stop us as members when we ask new questions. So we must be consistent in what we are doing in the House.
Thank you, Honourable Nkondlo. The final question, I recognize the Honourable Heron.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Just to be clear, Deputy Speaker, I wasn't asking a new question in my follow-up. I was asking the Minister, given that in 2023, the number of teachers or educators that were required by the department was already known for the 2024 MTEF period, that the reduction in the PES was already known by March 2024 when the budget was tabled, that the Western Cape Education Department's budget was reduced by 1.1 billion rand over the MTEF. How did the Western Cape Education Department suddenly have a 3.8 billion rand reduction or shortfall 4 months after the budget was announced? It's not a new question.
Before I recognize the Honourable Minister, I see the Chief Whip.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I'm slightly confused by what is going on because the Minister of Finance was answering the question, the follow-up question that Honourable Heron was asked, which was related to the question as Honourable Heron has just spoken about. I don't think that the input from Honourable Nkondlo is helpful because it's confusing the House. It now creates the impression that Honourable Heron has been given a third bite at the cherry.
Honourable members, I appreciate input even from the members. So I do appreciate the input provided by Member Nkondlo. During question number 2, when I personally via this computer lowered the Honourable Heron's hand as he was posing the second opportunity, I then recognized Honourable Van Wyk, and there was no further indication. And then I recognized, and then I noted the Honourable Heron's hand went up again in the absence of any other member. Hence, that is opportunity number 4. So that's question number 4. But let me see the Honourable Minister.
Deputy Speaker, the honourable member from the opposition raised a point of order, which interrupted the Honourable Minister of Finance, and she was busy giving us her response. And then we suddenly went to the final oral question, which is why we
Yes.
Because the minister hasn't had an opportunity to conclude response.
I take responsibility. Honourable Minister, you did not conclude. Then that is my fault. Please gun me to the wall. That is definitely my fault. The Honourable Minister, I humbly apologize to Honourable Heron. The 4th opportunity still remains, but let me note the Honourable Minister.
Deputy Speaker, if you're happy with it, I can always just do both questions at the same time, given that I've heard both questions at the now. So I just quickly pulled up the oral question reply of the 8th of May 2025. While I know that usually we don't deal with questions of same substance again, I'm happy to quickly just go through those particular items. For that particular question paper, we were asked whether the provincial budget in March 2024 was compliant with the PFMA in respect to the estimates of current expenditure from the Western Cape Education Department vote in respect of cost of employees. If not, why not? The answer specifically stated as follows. As stipulated in section 27, subsection 3, subsection B of the PFMA, and then I quote, an annual budget must be in accordance with the format as
may be prescribed and must at least contain estimates of current expenditure for that financial year per vote and per main division within the vote, quotes closed. In this regard, it can be confirmed that the Western Cape 2024 budget was tabled in accordance with the format as prescribed by National Treasury and contained the estimates of current expenditure, particularly in respect of cost of employment as compensation of employees in terms of the economic classification. Then further, the question went in terms of the response to the cost of employment, that the province's 2024 budget allocation was subjected to fiscal consolidation, a reduction of 6.4 billion over the 2024 MTEF. This reduction was proportioned. Now, Deputy Speaker, I just want to remind, earlier I spoke about the 6.3, that's when you round it up, it's 6.4, and then you add the added data updates to the PES, which gets you to 6.7. So I'll just quickly speak about the 6.4 again. This reduction was proportioned to all departments, including the Western Cape Education Department, which infers that all departments would have had to put measures in place to manage expenditure within their reduced allocations. Given that the Western Cape Education Department's budget is driven by compensation of employees, constituting almost 72% of its total budget in 2024-25, a large proportion of the fiscal consolidation was absorbed by compensation of employees. To mitigate the risk associated with fiscal consolidation, the Western Cape Education Department put in place a human resource plan. The rate of slowdown on compensation of employees' expenditure during the initial implementation of the HR plan was slower than anticipated. This resulted in a projected pressure on the compensation of employees' budget in the 2024-25 financial year, carried through to the outer years of the 2024 MTEF. This projected pressure was communicated by the WCED to PT as per the in-year monitoring reporting as early warning reporting system. In July 2024, in terms of Section 40, subsection 4, subsection C of the PFMA. And after various consultations with the WCED and analysis undertaken, the projected overspending risk was addressed as part of the 2024 adjustment budget process. Deputy Speaker, if it's in order, I'll go back to answering question number 3 regarding the innovative financing, if I'm allowed to.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. So in terms of provincial budgets, approximately 95% of our budget stems from national. This is both equitable share and various different conditional grants. And also then approximately just under 5% of our provincial budget is own revenue. Those are things like gambling taxes and motor vehicle licenses and so on. This is not only in the Western Cape. All provincial budgets, majority of their budgets come from national. So when we look at the provincial equitable share, we have seen that provinces, in terms of the horizontal split and the vertical split. On the horizontal split, you have something that is called the provincial equitable share formula. That is once national, it divides vertically the budget to national, to provinces, and then to local government. Local government received across South Africa approximately 9.7% of the national budget. Provinces received approximately 42% of the budget, and then national received the rest of the non-interest money. Then when you take that piece of the pie and you split it across the 9 provinces, you need to have a formula for how you give provinces money. That is called the provincial equitable share formula, and that is called essentially the horizontal split. And you can see that the source, or the legal source that really stems from, is Section 214 of the Constitution, that deals with how provincial equitable share formulas and how you need to fund mandates of provinces specifically, and the type of things you have to take into account before making those particular budgets. In the PAYES formula, you have various different components, and the PAYES formula is a funding tool. So you have data that goes in from health, you have data across the country that goes in from education, you have data that goes into, for example, the population growth, you have poverty data, and you have the economic data. The poverty data, for example, in South Africa has not yet been updated in the provincial equitable share formula. So I'm hoping that National will be updating poverty data for South Africa soonest, but that's obviously dependent on Stats SA and them publishing the respective data. When you look at the poverty data in comparison to the economic data, you will see that poverty data is almost 3 times more in terms of the weighting in the provincial equitable share in comparison to the economic data. So if you are a province that's growing economically, and you also, for example, are a province that has high population growth, what you see in the PAYS formula is you are actually not being compensated for doing better in terms of economic growth, and you're also not being compensated for forecasted population growth that's coming to your province. In the 2024 period, you would have noticed, Deputy Speaker, that we have had a 19.6% increase in population growth over the past decade. And when you compare that to GDP growth, when you compare that to jobs growth, when you compare that to the Gini coefficient declining, to the Human Development Index increasing, the population growth is just outpacing every other single metric in our province. So we need to have that conversation about sustainable population growth, because while one is progressing, one is simply not able to keep up with that level of population growth in our province. Another province that is also struggling with population growth is Gauteng. Recently, I met with MEC Maile in Gauteng, and we actually had a conversation about how the provinces, Gauteng and the Western Cape, for example, can work together on things like the estimated and the forecasted population growth and the economic growth, because they are sitting in the same position where essentially that the larger provinces are not really being incentivized in terms of funding, even though there's more urbanization happening in this regard. So when you look at the formula with population growth specifically, even though we are the 3rd largest province when it comes to population, we get the 5th largest or the 5th smallest equitable share, essentially, depending on if you want to look at the glass half empty or half full. So if you are seeing the fact that you have fiscal consolidation, and then you have the impact of fiscal consolidation even years after, even though there wasn't subsequent fiscal consolidation, then you have national budgets that essentially indicate that we've reached the fiscal cliff and that we cannot be spending more money on debt, then as provinces especially, we need to start thinking differently about how we are going to fund programs. And that is part of why we have launched an alternative and blended financing framework, because we need to be able to assist departments and even assist municipalities on thinking differently on how we are able to find funding for our programs, and particularly funding for programs that are related to infrastructure. Now, I know municipalities have been playing in the alternative and blended financing space for a long time, and as provinces, we have not had as much exposure to that type of environment, while we have also been using off-balance items as provinces often. For example, Gauteng recently went on balance and came to the National Loans Committee for a loan. And that is an example of on-balance financing instruments if one wants a loan or a concessional loan, or for example, a triple P, for example, is a bit of an off-balance item. You get things like hybrid capital and investor equity. You get things like social bonds and jobs bonds and skills bonds. You get various different things. You get things like, Deputy Speaker, you must please protect me against Minister Mayor. I think here he doesn't want me to finish.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, on the rise on the point of order.
You first wait until I recognize you, Honourable Minister. I see you, Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Since this is so fascinating, really excellent stuff. This reminds us when we studied economics at the university. Can the Minister please continue and not stop?
Honourable Minister, that is a frivolous point of order. I have earlier on cautioned the honourable members. Minister, please continue.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. I have the overview of provincial revenue and expenditure from the beginning of the year with us, because we did also put an extra excerpt of the alternative and blended financing in here. And if you know that it is unlikely that you will get more money, then you need to start thinking differently. You need to start working more with the private sector. But you can't just publish an alternative and blended financing framework and think the money is going to come in. You need something to build. And if you need something to build, then you have to, as a government, publish an infrastructure framework which speaks to the singular infrastructure pipeline. Because the private sector, the development sector, the banking sector, they want to know, okay, what are you coming to the table with? So the alternative and blended finance framework is intended to enable departments on how they can then land that on balance sheet financing, irrespective of what it is. And we must be honest with ourselves, Deputy Speaker, not every department and not every program is going to require the same type of alternative and blended financing mechanism. And what we did in the framework was we also made sure that we basically duplicated the National Loans Committee structure, essentially. So the National Loans Committee level, you have the 9 MECs for finance, and that is chaired by the National Minister of Finance. And when you go with your loan from your province to national, there's also laws that govern whether you're allowed to take a loan or not. Then the 9 MECs and the Minister of Finance, we vote. But you that come with the loan request, you're not allowed to vote for yourself. That's not how it works. So when Gauteng came for the loan, it puts it on the table and we get to interrogate, for example, whether or not this is fiscally responsible. Then what happens is we've then duplicated a similar structure at a provincial level within our alternative and blended financing framework, which deals with Provincial Loans Coordinating Committee. But before you even come to the Provincial Loans Coordinating Committee, there must be a technical assessment, because we need to make sure that what you are presented is technically sound and that we are able to deal with whatever possible future liability there might be upon us. When you deal with, for example, things like a credit facility. I know that Minister Meyer would be very interested in things like a credit vehicle facility, which is something that the Western Cape government through the Provincial Treasury as well as the National Treasury are currently working together with the World Bank. And the purpose of such a credit facility is to de-risk investment in things like energy, to de-risk investment in things like water and sanitation, to de-risk investment in things like housing. Because very often when you are going to go to market with such a big project, the banking sector and the commercial sector needs to know what is the risk in this particular project, who's going to take on this risk. And in this regard, on page 50, particularly in the overview book, overview of revenue, provincial revenue and expenditure for 2025, we've actually, and this is not a given, Deputy Speaker, departments can use this as a guideline. We've published examples of the type of blended financing instruments for sectors that departments can use. In the economic sector, you can use, for example, instruments like partial credit guarantees for projects with strong fundamentals, but facing high perceived risk. You can use things like syndicated loans for large-scale projects requiring significant capital investment, senior debt or bond issuance for projects with low to moderate risk profiles and reliable revenue streams, hybrid capital for projects requiring significant capital investment and risk sharing. In the digital sector, you have things like investment grants, partial credit guarantee vehicles, equity participation, or even portfolio securitization. In the energy sector, you also have things like partial credit guarantees. You have examples of syndicated loans, equity participation, hybrid capital. In the social sector, you have examples of investment grants to catalyze social impact bonds, partial credit guarantee vehicles, aggregator and convener of funds, for example, for NGOs and NPOs, subordinated debt for projects with strong revenue potential. And in the ecological sector, there are examples of investment grants, partial credit guarantee vehicles, equity participation and hybrid capital. So you can see, Deputy Speaker, it's not just getting a commercial loan. You could get a concessional loan. There are very different types of measures that you can use in order to be able to fund infrastructure. And when we look at things like our infrastructure budget, which is mainly budgeted through the national government, you will see that we can't continue with 10 billion, 10 billion, 10 billion, totaling 30 billion, when we have a 200 billion rand pipeline that we need to be able to use to grow our economy and create jobs. One of the key PFAs of the growth for jobs strategy, Deputy Speaker, is that we need to use infrastructure investment in order to grow the economy. So you have your ABF that you've tabled, you have your infrastructure investment that you tabled, but then you have, for example, you need to put your money where your mouth is, and you must have your investment summit that they are doing in the economic development and tourism department, because you need to now get to that target that we said to Premier, we are working towards this target. We need to do every single thing we can to grow our economy and create jobs. And part of those PFAs is how do we drive investment both in the private sector and in the public sector, so we can have the type of conversation with the private sector to say, what can we do together? How can we expedite our infrastructure investment? And this is so important, because if you want to get the GDP to keep pace with your population growth, if you want job creation to keep pace with your population growth, if you want to make a real dent in the Human Development Index, if you want to make a real dent in the Gini coefficient, and quite frankly, if we want to reduce food poverty, quite frankly, we need to be able to keep up with population growth. So, Deputy Speaker, we need to have a conversation about sustainable population growth. It is really, really important, because if this continues in Gauteng and in the Western Cape, for example, we're simply not going to be able to keep up. In the Department of Social Development, for example, Deputy Speaker, they were innovative. They created, I saw Minister Lont brought a Cape Care Fund water bottle with him. And the whole purpose of the Cape Care Fund is also an example of a convener and aggregator of funds for NPOs or NGOs. And what you do is, if you know you're not going to necessarily get more money from national, you have to start thinking differently. So it's not also only about alternative and blended financing strategies. It's also about alternative and blended ways and methodologies of doing things and thinking differently. The Premier previously was speaking about the AI framework and strategy that the Cabinet adopted. And you need to have this, because when you look, for example, at the Stats SA, the quarterly labor survey results, you see that when you see the finance sector increasing, when you see the agriculture sector increasing, part of these drivers of these sectors are technology. Part of the drivers of those sectors were the fact that people are doing things differently. And as a government, we must keep up. There are some of the countries, even in Europe currently, Deputy Speaker, that even said, even when we have AI frameworks and we have this human control and everything, we also need to have then a conversation about, I want to be able to own the intellectual property of my likeness, so that if someone uses my photo or my video online, for example, I want to have the opportunity to be able to say to someone, you must take that down online, because you're not allowed to use my likeness, because we should be able to own ourselves, Deputy Speaker, at the very least. That is why we have a constitution, to protect human rights. So we need to make sure that with the technology growth that we're seeing in the finance sector, with the technology growth that we're seeing in the agriculture sector, that we are able to put human beings first as per our constitutional rights, both in our South African Constitution and in our Western Cape Constitution. And I'm really proud of the work that the respective departments are doing. You see in the news, for example, the Department of Health is doing things like robotics. You see also in terms of alternative and blended financing that almost 2 years ago, that the Western Cape Education Department has what they call an Edu Invest desk that they even established with Westgrow, to make sure that if you want to invest in education in our province, that you are able to speak to the Western Cape government. When you look at how we're going to then grow the economy and create jobs, we've spoken about AI, for example, Deputy Speaker. I've spoken about infrastructure. I've spoken about the alternative and blended financing. I've spoken about the investment summit. And when you deal with these particular things and you go through that list of how are we going to grow the economy and create jobs, you have things even like, for example, the energy PFA.
Kindly conclude, your time has expired.
Deputy Speaker, I'll conclude, unfortunately, then. Okay. So I was at the PFA of energy, actually, and Premier also gave this government a target in terms of we want to be able to enable 5,200 megawatts into this system. But I'm hoping that maybe in the future, someone might even ask Minister Meyer about how far we are on those energy plans. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. That is the end of questions for oral reply. Outstanding replies will be printed in Hansard. We now proceed in terms of Rule 145. There will be an opportunity for members' statement. I now recognize the Democratic Alliance.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, the Democratic Alliance in the Western Cape welcomes the decision by the Western Cape government to challenge the validity of the National Health Insurance Act. This act was rushed through the National Council of Provinces with minimal public consultation, denying South Africans their constitutional right to be heard in the lawmaking process. Earlier this week, the provincial government filed papers with the Constitutional Court to protect the rights of our residents and to defend the principle of meaningful public participation. This is especially important because access to healthcare is a constitutional right, and the implementation of NHI would demand a disruptive overhaul of the healthcare system, including services already delivered effectively by provinces. The DA in the Western Cape stands firm on promoting democracy through genuine and meaningful public participation. The passage of such a far-reaching bill requires extensive engagement with the people, which simply did not happen. House Chair, the ANC's announcement of NHI on the eve of national elections is nothing more than political point scoring. No feasibility studies or financial plans have been presented to prove that this ambitious program could be implemented successfully. It is an illusion of free healthcare designed to win votes rather than to deliver services. The DA in the Western Cape will continue to defend both democracy and the right of every South African to quality healthcare. Legislation that affects the lives of millions must be based on honesty, feasibility, and public participation, not empty promises. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I recognize the African National Congress.
Thank you very much, Chair. We are often harsh on our criticism of the South African Police Service to the point of unwittingly forgetting the deep structural and systematic challenges they face under the weight of neoliberal austerity. This austerity offensive has not only hollowed out the capacity of the police, but has also weakened, if not compromised, their ability to prevent, combat, and investigate crime. This, in turn, has eroded public confidence in the police and emboldening criminals. But in Cape Town, compounding the problem further is the persistent crisis of structural underdevelopment in the DA-led city of Cape Town and province, conditions that severe constrain effective policing. Sadly, the DA-led provincial government stubbornly refuses to address the spread of squatter camps by not spending allocated grants. As a result, we see deteriorating roads through potholes across working class township and poor access roads, leaving many communities vulnerable. In this condition, the youth are especially exposed to recruitment to gang. Speaker, and our sector is the complicity and complacence within some of our communities. Too often, people look the other way when crimes occur in their midst. Despite these challenges, the men and women in blue in this province achieved a remarkable breakthrough through an intelligence-led operation. This led to the discovery of 19 firearms and 1,500 rounds of live ammunition. While no arrests have yet been made, the scale of the breakthrough is evidence that if there were to be moratorium on budget cuts in the police, such successes would be sustained, public confidence in the police would be restored, and the criminals would be less emboldened. As I conclude, we welcome the responsiveness of the acting Minister of Police as he said to visit the province soon. Bravo to the police. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I recognize the Patriotic Alliance.
Thank you, Chair. Yesterday's headlines scream, and I quote, 63 kids killed in 5 months in Kaap. Let that sink in. 63 young lives lost in just 5 months here in our province, in our city. 63 futures gone. This is not only inhuman, Honourable Chair. It is highly unacceptable and heartbreaking to say the least. These children have been victims of gang violence on the Cape Flats, and yet we're still sitting here, hands folded, when week after week, this very topic is echoed here in this very chamber. Parents should never have to bury their children. Yet, in the Cape Flats, in our townships and in too many of our communities across the province. Mothers and fathers are digging graves instead of nurturing dreams. Our children's laughter has been replaced by gunfire. Our neighborhoods have become war zones instead of safe haven. And so I must ask, Honorable Chair, has the ongoing violence and killings become a norm for the people of the Western Cape and Cape Town in particular? Are we accept the bloodshed as daily reality? Because if we do, then we as leaders have failed our people. And while we mourn, we cannot allow those in power to shift the bucket of blame. The governing party and this province and the city of Cape Town cannot point fingers to SEPS alone. You govern here, you have the resources, you have the means, and you have the responsibility to act and, and act decisively. As the Patriotic Alliance says, we say clearly, we do not condone this ongoing violence. We will not be silent while the children die. Every level of government, national, provincial, and local government must stand together
Please
to take
conclude, Honourable
urgent,
Member. Your time is up.
urgent actions. Because
Thank you
if we
very much. Your time is up, Honourable Member. Thank you very much. I recognize the Democratic Alliance.
Honourable House Chair, the Democratic Alliance in the Western Cape is proud to celebrate the success of the Western Cape Education Department's Provincial Skills Competition, hosted this past weekend at Belleville Technical High School. What began in 2018 with just 2 subjects has now grown into a flagship annual event with more than 400 learners and over 70 teachers competing across 21 learner categories and 9 teacher disciplines. These included both technical subjects such as civil technology, electrical technology, and engineering, graphics, and design, as well as non-technical skills like music, isiXhosa, consumer studies, and physical education. This competition not only celebrates technical and vocational excellence, but also inspires greater interest among learners while recognizing the creativity and dedication of our teachers. I am particularly proud that learners from rural areas such as Beaufort West showcased their skills. 2 grade 11 learners from Beaufort West Secondary School excelled in civil services category, completing 2 complex assignments within just 3 hours to take the first and the third place. Honourable House Chair, this initiative demonstrates the WCED's commitment to expanding the School of Skills curriculum and ensuring that learners are equipped to meet South Africa's future workforce needs. Technical and vocational education is vital if we are to grow the economy and tackle youth unemployment. The DA in the Western Cape congratulates all learners and teachers who participated, and we commend the WCD for building a culture of innovation, excellence, and opportunity across our province. We further wish our winners every success as they represent the Western Cape at the Interprovincial Skills Competition in Johannesburg next month. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I recognize the Economic Freedom Fighters.
Thank you, Chairperson. The EFF in the Western Cape is concerned about the state of affairs and the manner in which the situation is deteriorating in Kraaifontein. Kraaifontein is currently experiencing a high crime rate, which also includes child murders. The residents complain that there is no day passing without hearing multiple gunshots. Calls for a satellite police station with a gender-based violence help desk, as well as greater policing visibility, more especially at night, has been falling on deaf ears. Problems affecting Kraaifontein does not stop with crime. Recently, residents took to the streets to protest about a number of issues related to a lack of service delivery, both on the part of the City of Cape Town as well as the Western Cape Provincial Government. In Bloekombos, streets continue to be soaked with sewage as a result of infrastructure which is not constantly being serviced by the City of Cape Town. The city does not even make an effort to unblock these drains in the area, and this creates a further health hazard for everyone, with young children and the elderly being at risk as well. Kraaifontein Community Health Center is also experiencing shortages when it comes to a shortage of staff, personnel in the form of doctors, as well as a lack of adequate resources, such as bed shortages for patients. Bloekombos and Wallace Dean clinics are unable to handle the pressures which comes with healthcare, healthcare needs in their respective jurisdictions, with patients arriving as early as 5 a.m. in the morning to queue so that they can receive medical care, only to be turned back home in the afternoon without receiving the assistance needed. The area is a ticking time bomb, and if the authorities are not doing anything about the situation, then it's just a matter of time until things in the area explodes, as things are really out of hand. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I recognise the African National Congress.
Thank you, House Chair.
Honourable,
Am I audible to House Chair?
you may proceed, Member.
Thank you so much. House Chair, ek staan op om te praat oor 'n kennisgewing van 'n kliniek in Villiers. Hierdie kennisgewing het baie mense in die Weskaap baie kwaad gemaak en hulle het 'n reg om so te voel. Die kennisgewing sê dat mense kan nie 'n sieknota op 'n maandag of 'n Vrydag kry nie. Dit is verkeerd en teenstrydig met die grondwet van ons land. Mense kies nie wanneer om siek te word nie. Jy kan nie vir 'n persoon sê hulle mag nie van Dinsdag tot Donderdag siek wees nie. Dit is nie hoe siekte werk nie. Hierdie reël is baie onregverdig, veral vir plaaswerkers. 'n Sieknota is dikwels die enigste ding wat 'n werker beskerm om nie hul werk of hul geld te verloor nie. Om hulle sonder 'n nota weg te stuur, stel hulle lewensonderhoud in gevaar. Hierdie kliniek se reël is ook teenstrydig met die arbeidswetgewing van Suid-Afrika. Elke werker het die reg op 'n sieknota as hulle siek is, op enige dag van die week. Ons het hierdie saak by die HOD aanhangend gemaak, wat intussen die fasiliteit opdrag gegee het om die kennisgewing te verwyder. Ons waardeer die HOD se respons op hierdie saak. Dit is goed, maar dis nie goed genoeg nie. Ons moet vra hoe hierdie reël ook ooit toegelaat kon word. Watter soort denke lei tot so oneerbiedige beleid? Die mense van die Weskaap verdien 'n gesondheidsdiens wat omgee, elke dag van die week. Hulle moet nie weggestuur word weens die dag op die kalender nie. Ons het 'n volledige ondersoek nodig. Ons het 'n belofte nodig dat dit nooit weer sal gebeur nie. Dankie, House Chair.
Baie dankie, agbare lid. Ek erken die Demokratiese Alliansie.
Madam House Chair, I rise to call on this House to recognise the Springbok women on their historic achievement this past weekend, becoming the first South African team to reach the quarterfinals of the inaugural Women's 15 rugby competition. This is a landmark moment for women's rugby in our country and a testament to the passion, resilience and skill of these exceptional athletes. We are incredibly proud of the Springbok women and the many dedicated female athletes across South Africa, whose hard work and determination continue to uplift the sport and inspire a new generation of young women to believe in their dreams. From grassroots rugby fields to international arenas, these women are not only excelling in their sport, they are also breaking barriers, challenging stereotypes, and setting new standards for what is possible in women's sport. The Democratic Alliance recognizes that sports, arts, and culture are powerful vehicles for personal growth, social cohesion, and economic opportunity. Beyond competition, they serve as unifying forces, bridging divides, nurturing youth development, and instilling values of discipline, creativity, and teamwork. We encourage young people across the province to seize every opportunity to work hard, to pursue excellence both on the field and on the stage, and to use these platforms to build leadership, confidence, and healthy lifestyles. Together, we can continue to build pathways for our youth to thrive, both on and off the field. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Ek erken die Vryheidsfront Plus.
Baie dankie, Speaker and Madam Chair. Speaker, the Freedom Front Plus conveys its heartfelt condolences to families who've lost loved ones during this unrelenting carnage caused by gang shootings on the Cape Flat areas. While we are pursuing the devolution of policing powers for the Western Cape, we urge the Western Cape government to ensure that we do everything within our constitutional mandate to expand on crime prevention actions, to save lives, and to do the best we can in the troubling time we are facing. The Western Cape's people wants to realize their dreams here in the Western Cape. Everybody is coming here for jobs. Everybody is flocking to the Western Cape for a better life. And their lives dare not be cut short as a result of the decision to come here. In closing, Deputy Speaker, I want to use this opportunity to also convey to Mr. Peter Murray, the former father of this House, who made a valuable contribution in his term of office between 2019 and 2024. I want to wish him an 82nd congratulations on his 82nd year of life granted to him by the Almighty God above. I thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mare, and please do extend our warm wishes and Godspeed to the Honorable Peter Mare. Thank you very much. I recognize Al Jamal.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. Honorable House Chair, Section 27 of South Africa's Constitution provides that everyone has the right to access healthcare services and no one may be refused emergency medical treatment. Al-Jama is not surprised by the DA-run Western Cape Parliament to oppose any reforms in our country's unequal healthcare system. The province's decision to challenge the National Health Insurance Act in the Constitutional Court is another testament that the DA-led province is against dignified healthcare for vulnerable communities. Whilst we are aware that there are some concerns around the NHI, these cannot be used to stop the much-needed reforms within our healthcare system. The DA-led province continues to undermine transformation processes by national government. Quality and efficient healthcare is a basic human right to all. The Western Cape is a rich province, but at the same time, it remains one of the most unequal provinces in South Africa, where the quality and type of services people receive depends on their socio-economic conditions. We want to know how the province is paying for the lawsuit or whether it is taking from the budget meant for education, resulting once again in the retrenchment of more teachers. There is nothing unconstitutional about the NHI, and Al-Jama supports meaningful transformation in our healthcare system. I thank you very much, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I recognize the African Christian Democratic Party.
Thank you, Madam House Chair. Madam House Chair, the discovery of the arms and ammunition found in Lentegeur in Mitchell's Plain on Monday on the 1st of September is evidence of the continuation of violence in Mitchell's Plain and other areas. 19 illegal firearms and 15,000 rounds of ammunition and assorted weapons were found during the raid led by the South African Police Services. Among it was found torso target shooting practice. It's alleged that the owner was not at the house during the raid. If these guns has gone on the streets, Madam House Chair, it would mean that 19 people will be armed, and you look at about 15,000 deaths, 15,000 bullets, 15,000 deaths. So we commend the SAPS for discovering these arms and ammunition in Lentegeur. But Madam Chair, the big problem is, and as I said previously, the big problem is there's so many illegal firearms roaming the streets, and SAPS must take responsibility because many of these firearms were stolen from police precincts. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I recognize the Good Party.
House Chair, we have no statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. I recognize the Democratic Alliance.
Honorable House Chairperson, the Western Cape Provincial Parliament has always understood that its constitutional mandate of lawmaking, oversight, and public participation cannot be executed in isolation. This Parliament has deliberately forged new partnership to strengthen its capacity, deepen democracy, and ensure that the voices of our people echo in every decision we make. Through initiatives like WCPP Engage and the virtual Petitions Roadshow, we have collaborated with civic organizations, municipalities, and technology partners to expand access to our province and our processes. These partnerships extend the reach of Parliament far beyond Wales Street, ensuring that the oversight we exercise reflect the lived experiences and the realities in rural towns, informal settlements, and migrant communities in the Western Cape. Internationally, the WCPP has engaged with legislatures across Africa and beyond, sharing knowledge and learning through study visits, conferences, and networks. These relationships not only enrich our institutional practice and position, but it also makes this Parliament a credible player in the interparliamentary cooperation space. Honourable members, allow me to situate these partnerships in the context of a global obligation, the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security. This resolution challenges national governments, provincial government, and local governments to ensure that women are central to peace, security, and development. Our committees already play an important role by interrogating whether departmental budgets empower women, by tracking how disaster and climate responses include women's leadership, and by engaging communities to bring grassroots perspectives into our debates. These partnerships in practice allow us to partner with our communities, partner with government departments, and provide spaces where we ensure that every rand is spent to advance safety, dignity, and equal participation for women.
Please conclude, Honourable Member. Your time is up.
The resolution challenges us as the WCPP to renew our commitment to be the guardians of accountability and the partners in building a safer and more just,
Very much,
inclusive
Honourable Member.
environment. Thank you.
Honourable members, that brings us to the end of statements. In terms of Rule 145(6), I now give one or more members of the executive present an opportunity to respond to member statements for not more than 5 minutes collectively. I recognize the Honourable Minister Meyer.
Honourable House Chair, since this matter was raised in this House about the issue of the devolution of powers, I want to put it to this House that the Premier and the Cabinet has taken a decision that we will now table an executive bill to deal with the matter relating to the Powers Bill. This Powers Bill will specifically deal with the following matters in particular to expedite the growth of this government. And so the Powers Bill will deal with the issues of trade, the issues of the harbour, the issues of exports, the issues of public transport, and the issue of safety and security. I hereby therefore give notice that the Premier will formally table an executive bill, not a committee bill in this House. And this is a very important step because we are determined to do what the Premier has said in the beginning of the year when honourable members on this side and this side of the House was at the opening of Parliament in Beaufort West. The Premier said, step up. And I think since the 20th of January, that we have seen the urgency now in the world, particularly what has happened in the United States with the global trade and the tariff and the geopolitics, that we are now ready to introduce that executive bill because we are interested in giving substantive content to the issue of the Powers Bill. I would also like to inform members of this House that there is a huge appetite within the Government of National Unity for some of these particular proposals, and I am particularly happy that we have found each other in some of these things. In addition, Honourable House Chair, it is significant, it is important that we also understand, given the situation now in the country with animal diseases and foot and mouth diseases, that the issue of provincial veterinary services will now also come to this House. I therefore am particularly happy that where this government is taking decisions that it will ultimately affect the quality of life of people and the Government of National Unity. And I know, Honourable Member, through you, House Chair, the Honourable Member Nkondlo is particularly happy that we have found each other in the issues of the Powers Bill, because the Powers Bill will give this House more power, and this House are 42 members, and the more powers we have, the more oversight we can also do. And I want to put it in this House that this is an excellent contribution on all members of this House because we are asking for more powers.
Order, members.
Because powers has to do with the principle of subsidiarity. And I can see in this House, there's a big appetite on that side of the House, on this side of the House, and on this side of the House, that the principle of subsidiarity has finally found its way into this House. And I would therefore like to table this executive statement in this House.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister Meyer. Your executive statement are duly noted and thus recorded. Honourable members, that brings us to the end of member statements. We are now moving to notices of motions in terms of Rule 151. All notices of motions by members are required to be delivered to the Secretary for placing it on the order paper. These motions have been duly submitted and published on the order paper below the line. Honourable members, in terms of motions without notice, Rule 150, we now move to motions without notice. As indicated, I would like to inform you that in terms of the Standing Rule 150 pertaining to motions without notice, condolence and congratulatory were submitted to the Programming Authority prior to this plenary on the 2nd of September 2025. Members are also reminded that motions without notice pertaining to congratulatory and condolence will not be allowed in the sitting that have not been processed by the Programming Authority. I have been informed that in the Programming Authority meeting on the 2nd of September 2025, political parties submitted the names of honourable members in the desired order of speaking and who had wished to move a motion without notice in this sitting of the House. I will therefore, just for noting and for the purpose of the minutes, call out on the honourable members whose names have accordingly been submitted and approved. The following members' motions have been approved by the Programming Authority as follows. The Honourable B. Ngensu of the ANC, Honourable P.Z. Lekker of the ANC, Honourable R. Windvogel of the ANC, Honourable A.P. Barnes of the ANC, Honourable B. Ngensu of the ANC, Honourable B.M. van Minnen of the DA, 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 Honourable N.P. Masipa of the DA, Honourable D.W. Bryant of the DA, Honourable B.M. van Minnen of the DA, Honourable B.M. van Minnen of the DA, Honourable B.M. van Minnen of the DA, Honourable N.P. Masipa of the DA, Honourable W.F. Kaiser Philander of the DA, Honourable N.P. Masipa of the DA, Honourable N.P. Masipa of the DA, and Honourable G. Brinkhuis of Al Jamaa. I now put the motions duly submitted and approved by the Programming Authority to the House. Are there any objections, honourable members? No objections, agreed to. The motions will appear in the minutes of proceedings and in Hansard in each individual member's name as if that member had read them aloud. I will now afford the opportunity to members to move motions without notice as per Standing Rule 153D. This could also include motions without notice that were not approved in the Programming Authority meeting. Members are thus reminded that the 30 minutes as per Standing Rule 153D will start now. I recognize the Honourable Syed.
Thank you very much, Honourable House Chairperson. I move without notice on behalf of the African National Congress that this House notes and strongly condemns the actions of Premier Alan Winde and the Western Cape government for taking the national health insurance to the Constitutional Court, an action that undermines national health policy and wastes public funds that could be used to improve healthcare services in our province. The House notes that during his 2025 State of the Province address, Premier Winde claimed that the Provincial Strategic Plan, or the PSP 2025 to 2030, is aligned with the National Medium-Term Development Plan, or the MTDP, which will guide our work over the next term, unquote. Yet by challenging the NHI in court, the Premier has directly contradicted the MTDP, which explicitly positions the NHI as a central pillar of universal, equitable healthcare. This action exposes the Democratic Alliance's naked hypocrisy and demonstrates that the Western Cape government prioritizes political obstruction and balkanization over the health and well-being of its citizens, particularly poor and working class communities. The House notes further that at yesterday's Standing Committee on the Premier and Constitutional Matters, Premier Windy's department was confused as to whether the PSP is a strategic plan or a framework, with the Director General clarifying it to be a roadmap. Members of the public who attended the meeting stated that they were so confused by the presentation that they could see the Premier is out of touch with the people, and this reaffirmed their lived reality of being ignored and disconnected from decision-making processes. The House further notes that the NHI is a progressive reform aimed at ensuring access to quality healthcare for all South Africans, and that resources being spent on lawyers and litigation could instead be directed towards clinics, hospitals, medical staff, and service delivery in communities most in need. Premier Windy's legal challenge clearly shows that the DA is not concerned about the health of people, but only that they remain healthy enough to work. The House welcomes the principle of universal health care and the implementation of the NHI as outlined in the MTDP, and calls on the Premier and the Western Cape government to immediately withdraw this Constitutional Court challenge and fully commit to supporting the NHI in line with the national priorities. The House resolves that the DA's obstruction of the NHI be exposed, that public funds be redirected to the delivery of health care, and that all health policy in the province be aligned with the National Medium-Term Development Plan to ensure equitable access and services for all.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Members, are there any objection to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognise the Honourable Syed.
Honourable House Chairperson, I move without notice on behalf of the African National Congress that the House notes and welcomes the announcement by the Department of Public Works, Deputy Minister Sihle Zikalala, to use the Expropriation Act to reclaim hijacked, abandoned and derelict buildings in the Western Cape, particularly in areas such as Goodwood and Kraaifontein, and repurpose them for public good. The House notes that 43 buildings have already been identified under Operation Bringback, and that Deputy Minister Sihle Zikalala has affirmed the government's commitment to use the Expropriation Act, including where necessary, without compensation, to return these properties to productive use. The House further notes that the Expropriation Act, signed into law in January 2025, explicitly allows for expropriation without compensation in circumstances where properties are abandoned, hijacked, or pose a danger to surrounding communities. This progressive intervention ensures that buildings left to decay or criminal misuse are brought back under democratic ownership and redirected to serve urgent public needs such as affordable housing, community facilities, and social services. The House further notes that many communities in the Western Cape face an acute housing shortage and urban decay caused by abandoned or hijacked properties, and that decisive action by the national government is necessary to address these injustices, particularly where the Western Cape government has failed to act decisively. This House resolves to support the use of the Expropriation Act to reclaim abandoned and hijacked properties in the Western Cape, to ensure that they are rehabilitated for public benefit, and to call on the Western Cape government to work with the Department of Public Works and affected communities to implement this program in a transparent, just, and effective manner.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I put to the House. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. Order, members. Order, members. Members, no need for any order, members. There's no need. Members on my left and members on my right. Let's maintain the decorum of the House. There's no need for back and forth. Thank you very much. I recognize the Honourable Nkondlo.
Honorable House Chair, I move without notice that the House notes with deep concern the surge in violent crime in the small towns of Witzenberg municipality, including the brutal assault of a 2-year-old child in Woolsley recently, who remains in Tygerberg Hospital after being attacked by his father, and the tragic killing of a young woman in Prince Hamlet at the hands of her boyfriend. These horrific incidents underscore the growing vulnerability of women and children in rural communities where limited policing resources, inadequate social support, and weak safety mechanisms leave residents exposed to cycles of violence and abuse. The House must condemn the DA-led provincial government for its persistent failure to protect women and children in rural areas. Despite repeated calls for stronger rural safety intervention, which also must cover farm workers and ordinary citizens beyond only the farmers and the farm owners, victims remain at the mercy of abusers while the provincial government hides behind rhetoric. The reality is that the Western Cape has become the epicenter of violence against women and children, and the DA government has failed to act decisively. The House therefore calls on the provincial government to intensify interventions in Witzenberg and other rural municipalities, to introduce dedicated rural safety plans that also take into cognizance women and children, to expand and strengthen victim support services, to take urgent steps to ensure that perpetrators of gender-based violence and child abuse are brought swiftly and firmly to justice. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I put to the House. Are there any objection to the motion being moved without notice? No objection? Agreed to. Honourable members, I recognize the Honourable Nkondlo.
Chair, I move without notice that the House notes with outrage the dishonesty of the Democratic Alliance in claiming that the city of Cape Town was forced to discontinue the provision of emergency kits during the COVID-19 pandemic. This, House Chair, I communicate to you, to Member Bryant, who was actually telling untruths in this House last week, Thursday. And this due to instructions from the National Treasury. The truth is that the National Treasury called on all government departments to reprioritize budgets during the COVID-19 to respond to the crisis. And it was the DA-run municipality that chose to cut this critical service, leaving vulnerable families without urgent relief in their time of greatest need. The House must condemn the DA for once again misleading the public and attempting to shift blame onto the national government to cover up its own callous decision-making. The DA's deliberate removal of this essential support during a national disaster exposed its lack of compassion for the poor and working-class communities, which now all of a sudden they've just woken up, to the love of these communities, and their habitual use of lies to deflect accountability. The House must call on the DA to take responsibility for its decisions and stop misleading residents of the Western Cape and commit to restoring services that protect the dignity and livelihoods of vulnerable households. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognize the Honourable Nkondlo. Please proceed, Member.
House Chair, I move without notice that the House notes the abuse of tariffs by the City of Cape Town, driving the ever-rising cost of living. It's becoming a reality for most Cape Townians that they cannot afford to live with dignity in their city they call home. What good is a city when its citizens cannot afford to live in it? The only people who can afford to live in Cape Town are increasingly foreigners. There's an increasing number of Germans, Ukrainians, Russians snapping up properties within the Atlantic seaboard. This is because of the euro exchange to the local currency. To them, the property prices are cheap and they can comfortably afford to pay the monthly municipality rates, which in areas like Camps Bay can average above 10,000 rands per month. What about the citizens of this city who have been property owners for many years and are now faced with the reality of not being able to afford the monthly rates imposed by the city? Is this not a despicable plan and strategy by the city to force its residents out of their homes in order to enable foreign ownership? A large percentage of these foreign owners don't intend to make Cape Town their primary residence. And this is driving asset and wealth inequality that was spoken about by the Stats SA and revealed in the inequality report of 2019. And we await the next report next year in 2026. Cities like London and Amsterdam have faced similar challenges and often debated the effects of increasing property tariffs in driving inequality amongst their people. The House of Commons saw Brexit as an opportunity to address socio-economic issues, including property ownership and housing inequality, and restore major cities like London back into the hands of the British people. In 2013, it was widely reported that London's property ownership had become more Indian, Chinese, and Russian, and less British, forcing Londoners with no other option but to rent. To bring this home, I will use an analogy of Yanga, a 28-year-old architect graduate who lives in Gugulethu and commutes daily into Cape Town CBD to service his employment duties in one of the city's prestigious property development firms. He's been working here for over 5 years and grateful to have this job, as some of his graduates are out of employment. It saddens Yanga's heart to think that he designs apartments that he cannot afford to purchase at his current salary. These are apartments deemed as lock-up and go type of living, targeting young professionals with younger falling under, yet it's outside of his affordability rate. Who is to be blamed for this? And this excludes the almost 5,000 they will have to fork out monthly for levies, rates, water, and electricity. There are many youngers out there who are facing similar struggles. How can this city pride itself as the best city to live in when its citizens cannot afford to live in it? Something needs to change. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognize you, Honourable Minister.
Chairperson, before you moved the question for requesting whether we object or not, I wanted to raise a point of order on Rule 153 of our rules regarding a motion that offends against the practice of the rules, because I do believe that the xenophobia in the motion violates against the Bill of Rights, Section 21 of our Constitution regarding the freedom of movement. Everyone has the right to freedom of movement, including all the nationalities that the member has mentioned.
You can't do that.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. We will consult Hansard and revert back. Thank you very much. I recognize order members. Order members. I recognize the Honourable Windvogel.
Chairperson.
You are audible, Honourable Member. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I move without notice that the House notes with outrage the shocking condition at Khayelitsha District Hospital, where patients are being forced to sleep on cold floors, sit on chairs for days, and even buy their own medication due to severe overcrowding, staff shortages, and a chronic lack of resources. Families have been left desperate, with some removing sick loved ones without treatment because of the unbearable conditions. The House condemns the DA-led provincial government for its continued neglect of poor and working class communities, where healthcare facilities like Khayelitsha Hospital are collapsing under pressure while the DA diverts resources to wealthy areas. Despite years of promises, the DA has failed to invest adequately in township healthcare infrastructure, leaving residents with indignity, suffering, and preventable death. The House calls on the provincial government to immediately intervene by increasing funding, staff, and capacity at the Khayelitsha Hospital, and to prevent an urgent turnaround plan to ensure that no patient in the Western Cape is again forced to sleep on the floor in a so-called world-class province. Anything less is a betrayal of the people. I so move.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There's an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognize the Honourable Stoffels.
Thank you, House Chair. I move without notice that the House notes the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second War, marked by the Grand Military Parade held in Beijing on the 3rd of September 2025, which brought together the world leaders, including President Xi Jinping, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, alongside representatives from across the globe. The House recognized that this commemoration was not only a display of China's military capabilities, but also an important reminder of the sacrifices made during the war and the collective responsibility of nations to safeguard peace. The House further welcomes the emphasis placed on the national unity, historical memories, and technological progress, which demonstrate the potential in science and innovation when directed towards national resilience and international stability. The House commends the spirit of solidarity reflects in this anniversary and calls for the strengthening of international cooperation and ensure that the horrors of the global conflict are never repeated. The House further notes the deep and enduring relationship between South Africa and China, grounded in BRICS partnership and shared aspiration for peace, development, and multipolar global cooperation. The House therefore urges that occasions such as these be used to deepen ties between our two nations, to foster dialogues, and to build bridges of understanding across the international community and pursuit of peace, stability, and prosperity for all people. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? There's an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognize the Honourable B. Stoffel.
Thank you, House Chair. On behalf of the African National Congress, we move without notice that the House notes with grave concern the alarming increase in the abuse of codeine-based cough syrup, informally known as lean, amongst youth in Cape Town. This dangerous concoction, often mixed with fizzy drinks to induce euphoric high, has become prevalent in areas such as Lavender Hill. During recent crime prevention operations, authorities discover empty cough syrup bottles in nearly every public open space, indicating widespread misuse. The situation escalated when a motorist was apprehended with a significant quantity of cough syrup and alleged detailing sales to minors, leading to an arrest under the Medicine Act. This House condemns the illicit sale and distribution of cough syrup to children and calls for immediate and decisive action from the law enforcement to dismantle the networks facilitating this abuse. Furthermore, the House urged the provincial government to enhance community outreach program aimed to educating youth about the danger of substance abuse and to strengthen support systems for the at-risk individuals. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? Thank you very much. There's an objection. The motion will be printed on the order paper. I recognize the Honourable Member Nkensu.
Chair, I move without notice that this House notes with appreciation that Friday, 5th September 2025 marks Casual Day, South Africa's annual national awareness and fundraising campaign in support of people living with disability. The House further notes that this year's theme, Beyond the Label, embracing unity through inclusivity and diversity, calls on society to break the stereotypes, see beyond prejudice, and affirm the dignity and humanity of every individual. The House commends the tireless efforts of organizations that champion the rights and interests of people living with disabilities, who continue to mobilize society and raise much-needed resources in the face of systematic neglect. The House calls on the provincial government to prioritize disability rights with concrete action, including comprehensive accessibility plans, increased funding for inclusive services, and stronger protection against discrimination. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objection. Agreed to. I recognize the Honourable Ntensu.
Thank you very much, Honorable Bosman, for sobering up. I move without notice that the House knows and welcomes the 50,000.
Got a point of order. Please take your seat, Honourable Ntensu.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I'd like to just ask that you ask Honourable Benson to clarify his comment. I heard he said thank you very much to Honourable Bosman for sobering up, therefore implying that I seem to be not sober. So I'd just like him to clarify that statement.
Thank you very much, Chief Whip. Honourable Member, can I please ask you to refrain from unnecessary comments? Can you please continue with your motion?
Honourable Acting House Chairperson, I'm going to insist that the Honourable Gwensu withdraws, because I do think that he's impugning on my dignity. I'm a very sober person, and I don't understand why Honourable Benson would make this assertion.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chief Whip. Honourable Gensu, did you indeed make this statement?
I withdraw.
Thank you very much, Member. The Honourable Member withdrew. I'm not going to entertain further comments or points of orders on this matter. Honourable Member, please proceed.
I move without
Order,
notice
members.
that the House knows and welcomes a 50,000 reward offered by the South African Police Service for an information leading to the arrest and conviction of those responsible for the tragic murder of Mjolisi Makibisana, ANC's Khayelitsha convener and SANCO activist, was fatally shot at his home in Makaza, Khayelitsha, on 23 June 2025. This initiative underscores the commitment of law enforcement to bring justice to the victim and his family. The House further commends the leadership of the ANC in the Dela Oma, particularly Chairperson Ditine Chito, for their unequivocal support to the police efforts. The ANC stance reflects a collective responsibility to uphold the rule of law and ensure that perpetrators of violence are held accountable. The House calls on all members of the community, irrespective of political affiliation, to come forward with any information that may assist in the investigation. The House also urges the provincial government to continue its support for law enforcement agencies in their pursuit of justice for Mjolisi Makibisela and certain measures that protect activists and community leaders who work tirelessly to improve the lives of others. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objections? Agreed to. Honourable members, I recognize the Honourable Ntensu.
House Chair.
Honourable Ntensu, please take your seat.
What happened?
Member Winvogel, is that a point of order? Member Winvogel?
No, Chair, it's not a point of order, but we can't hear the honourable member.
I will ask the member to turn up his volume and also make sure that the mic is on. Thank you, Honorable Van Vogel. Please proceed, member.
Apologies, Chair in the House. I move without notice that the House notes with appreciation the recent success of the South African Police Service during Operation Chanela in Khayelitsha, Cape Town, where police officers working to combat the crime in Makaza encountered an armed threat while conducting vehicle checks in the area. The incident occurred opposite the Jafta K Masemula taxi rank, where Toyota LDV was stopped after the driver attempted to evade the police. The police successfully intercepted the vehicle, seizing an AK-47 rifle, 9mm firearm and ammunition. Two suspects, both age 37, were arrested and are said to appear in the Khayelitsha Magistrates Court. This House commends the courage and professionalism of the officers involved in ensuring the safety of the community, effectively removing dangerous weapons and preventing potential violence, and calls on law enforcement to continue such proactive operation to protect residents and reduce crime in Khayelitsha. I so move, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Are there any objections to the motion being moved without notice? No objection, agreed to. I recognize the Honorable Van Vogel.
Thank you, House Chair. I move without notice that the House notes with outrage the protest by residents of Bloekombos and Wallisdene in Kraaifontein, who were forced to march through Silverville streets to demand the most basic services, including a mobile police station, a gender-based violence desk, 24-hour clinic services, and urgent upgrades to roads, sanitation, street lights, and electricity. These conditions expose the DA-led City of Cape Town and the DA-led provincial government's continual failure to deliver to poor and working-class communities, leaving residents to live in filth, fear, and neglect. While the DA boasts about governance, the reality for communities
Member
in
Van Vogel, I do apologize for interrupting you. It seems that this is a different motion to what was submitted. We are now on motion 12. That motion was dealt with, member. Do you have the correct motion with you?
No, Chairperson. I only have two motions here.
The one that you have just delivered is the one that was already read out. So then it would be the other one in your possession.
Thank you, Chair.
You may proceed, member.
Thank you, Chairperson. I move without notice that the House notes with outrage the protest by residents of Bloekombos and Wallisdene in Kraaifontein, who were forced to march through Silverville streets to demand the most basic services, including a mobile police station, a gender-based violence desk, 24-hour
Honorable Member Van Vogel.
Yes.
That motion that you are currently reading was dealt with already.
That's the only motion.
That's the only motion that you have.
Yes, thank
you very much, member. I then proceed to Member Stoffel.
Thank you, House Chair. I move without notice that the House note the recent announcement that 4 municipalities in the Western Cape, calling Beaufort West, Cederberg, Kanaland, and Matsikama, have qualified for Eskom debt relief under the National Treasury Debt Relief Program, with a combined initial write-off of 93.1 million. Beaufort West have received 25.6 million in relief, Cederberg 15 million, Kanaland 14.8 million, and Matsikama 37.7 million. The House further notes that the programs allow for up to 2/3 of the remaining Eskom debt to be written off over the next 2 years, provided that municipalities continue to meet strict conditions of financial discipline, improve revenue collection, and responsible governance. The House welcomed the decisive intervention by the National Treasury and ESCOM in providing struggling municipalities with a space to recover, while condemning the DA-led provincial government for failing to provide the necessary leadership.
Order, members.
And oversight to prevent municipalities from collapsing in debt in the first place. The reality is that the national government has stepped in where the province have failed. The House called on the DA-led provincial government to stop paying lip service and instead provide tangible, consistent support to ensure municipalities meet the program's conditions, stabilize their finances, and deliver reliable services to residents. Anything less is a betrayal of the people who depend on these municipalities for basic services. I so move.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Are there any objections to the motion being moved?
That you failed.
Order, members. Can you please contain yourself? Allow me to put the question to the House. Are there any objection to the motion being moved without notice? There is an objection and the motion will be printed on the order paper. Honourable members, that concludes motions without notice, and that concludes the business for the day. The Secretary will now end the meeting and all members will be exited from the sitting. The House is adjourned.